There were exactly 12 rules in the constitution of Gozaru City, a bustling metropolis perched on the edge of a perfectly calm volcano and governed by what locals lovingly referred to as total bureaucratic nonsense. Rule number 7 stated clearly, do not, under any circumstances, bring outside eggs into the central plaza during breakfast hours. Why? No one knew. But everyone obeyed it. Everyone, that is, except Kazuki Watanabe, who was, to put it politely, a deeply confused man with a PhD in animal culinary espionage and the fashion sense of a narcoleptic flamingo. On this particular Tuesday morning, Kazuki arrived in the plaza wearing a bathrobe, neon pink rain boots, and dragging behind him a wheelbarrow filled with contraband omelets. Breakfast is a battlefield, he muttered as he began flipping the omelets onto decorative statues, ledges, and unsuspecting pigeons. 3 minutes later, chaos erupted. "He has brought the egg of the West," shouted an old woman in a visor, hurling her hot coffee at him. "The Rice Council will hear of this." Indeed, they would. The Rice Council, an ancient, shady governing body composed entirely of retired lunch ladies and martial arts monks, met in an underground chamber lined with grain-filled hourglasses. They ruled Gozaru City with an iron ladle and wore ceremonial hats shaped like rice balls. At the head of the council sat Lady Mochiko, an 82-year-old tactical genius with biceps like anvils and the ability to paralyze a man with nothing but her glare and a spoon. As soon as the alert bell rang, a chicken-shaped alarm that honked mournfully, she slammed her rice ladle on the table and rose. "Activate the bento protocol." "But Lady Mochiko," said Councilmember Daikin, chewing nervously on a bean sprout, "we haven't used that since the tofu uprising." "This is worse," Mochiko growled. "This is eggs." Meanwhile, Kazuki had no idea any of this was happening. He had already moved on to his next task, infiltrating the city's artificial lake to retrieve the legendary yolk stone, a glowing, mildly radioactive gem said to grant mastery over all breakfast dishes. No one knew where it came from or why it was buried inside a giant robotic duck at the bottom of the lake. That's just how things worked around here. To help him in this ludicrous endeavor, Kazuki assembled a team of very unwilling participants: Tomo the reluctant acrobat, a failed circus performer turned locksmith who insisted he was allergic to water and responsibility; Nari the debt mage, who owed 7 million yen to a vending machine and could only cast spells when drunk on melon soda; Daisuke Chainsaw Omihara, a gentle florist who was really into chainsaws but never used them for violence, just oddly expressive gardening. "Why are we doing this?" Tomo asked as they paddled out into the lake on a makeshift raft made from driftwood, bubble wrap, and one soggy umbrella. "Because," Kazuki said, pointing to a hand-drawn map that looked suspiciously like a pizza menu with crayon scribbles, "the duck lies just beneath the Salsa Island." "That's not a real island," Nari said, squinting. "That's literally a chip dipped in salsa." "You lack vision," Kazuki replied. They dived. Now, if you've never been inside a robotic duck, picture this: it's cold, it smells vaguely like rust and bad soup, and it's filled with confusingly erotic wall murals involving bacon. Inside the duck's mechanical heart, guarded by an army of sentient crab drones, sat the yolk stone. It pulsed like a heartbeat and made an ominous sizzling sound, which frankly just made everyone hungry. As they tiptoed around the crabs, who were distracted watching a soap opera on a waterproof tablet, Daisuke accidentally sneezed. Not a normal sneeze. A floral sneeze. Petals erupted from his nostrils and tickled the nearest crab into a berserk frenzy. "Run!" Tomo shouted, hurling a melon soda at Nari. Nari caught it, chugged it, belched lightning, and promptly incinerated half the duck's internal wiring. Sparks flew. The duck began to rise. Above the lake, Lady Mochiko stood on the pier, arms crossed, watching with a mixture of awe and murderous anticipation as the giant duck erupted from the water like some demented breakfast god. "So," she whispered, "the fool truly seeks the yolk stone." Councilmember Daikon waddled over. "Should I prepare the oatmeal knights?" "No," she said. "Send in the rice ninjas." Kazuki and his team barely made it back to shore before the duck exploded behind them, shooting out fireworks and scrambled eggs. The crowd went wild, mostly because they thought it was a government-sponsored breakfast stunt. "We're legends!" Kazuki yelled, holding the glowing yolk stone above his head like a mystical pancake trophy. But their victory was short-lived. Ninjas fell from the sky. Dozens of them, each dressed in off-white robes and wielding rice paddle nunchucks, surrounded the group in a perfect circle. Their leader, a man known only as Wasabi Shadow, stepped forward. "You have violated the sanctity of breakfast," he intoned. Kazuki blinked. "I thought it was brunch." The ninja didn't flinch. "Prepare for the sticky judgment." Daisuke raised a hand. "Could we maybe talk this out over tempura?" "No talking. Only grain." And so, the real battle began. In most cities, a ninja ambush would send civilians running, shrieking into the hills. But in Gozaru City, ninja attacks were so frequent they were classified as light urban inconvenience. In fact, several food stalls near the lake had already started hawking ninja-themed takoyaki while offering souvenir shurikens with every 10th purchase. "Duck blast, duck blast, duck blast," shouted a child wearing a cardboard rice hat, pelting innocent bystanders with jelly beans. No one stopped him. In the center of this increasingly festive disaster, Kazuki and his band of dubiously qualified adventurers stood surrounded by a battalion of rice ninjas. These were not your garden-variety stealth operatives. These were elite warriors trained in the ancient art of culinary subtlety, which included throwing sticky rice stars, disguising themselves as rice cookers, and delivering poetic death haikus, though those were recently outlawed due to excessive syllable violations. "Let me do the talking," Kazuki whispered. "No." Tomo and Nari said in unison. But it was too late. Kazuki stepped forward confidently, holding the glowing yolk stone like a misplaced bowling trophy. "Greetings, honorable starch assassins," he said, bowing slightly too low and knocking his own head into a ninja's shin. "Might I interest you in an omelet negotiation?" A rice paddle whizzed past his ear. Wasabi Shadow stepped forward again, his voice like miso poured over thunder. "You have desecrated the sacred pact. No eggs in the plaza. No meddling with the duck of destiny. And no, wearing neon pink boots after midday." Kazuki looked down at his boots. "They're actually coral." "Silence," shouted another ninja. "You've violated Rule 12C, footwear of questionable hue." At that moment, Nari, who was quietly downing a second can of melon soda like it was liquid courage, stepped in. "All right, let's just de-escalate for a second," she slurred gently, trying to sound professional despite the burp hiccuping its way up her throat. "Maybe we just hand over the rock and no one gets fluffed." "Fluffed?" Tomo whispered. "You mean roughed?" "No," she said with a wink. "I mean fluffed." Before Kazuki could offer another breakfast-themed apology, the ninjas attacked. It wasn't a loud battle. That would have made sense. No, it was eerily polite. The ninjas moved like angry curtains, soundless and swift, slapping the group with rice fans, soy sauce mists, and an aggressive use of sushi-grade rope. Daisuke tried to defend the team by revving his ceremonial gardening chainsaw, but it sputtered sadly and released a gentle burst of lavender-scented steam. "I haven't oiled it since the Chrysanthemum Festival," he shouted. Tomo rolled into action, quite literally, by somersaulting backward into a shrub. He re-emerged with a rusty umbrella and used it to parry several rice stars before getting stuck upside down in a recycling bin. "I regret nothing," he yelled from the bin. Kazuki, meanwhile, stood perfectly still, holding the yoke stone as the ninjas circled him. He closed his eyes, waiting for inspiration, or possibly for a discount coupon to blow in on the wind and save them all. Instead, something inside the stone clicked. A low hum vibrated through the air. The stone pulsed once, twice. Then erupted in a blinding yellow flash. Everyone froze. And then, standing beside Kazuki, seemingly summoned from the egg-shaped core of the stone itself, was a tiny, floating man wearing a chef's hat the size of a sedan. His mustache was shaped like a fried shrimp. His feet didn't touch the ground, but his apron fluttered as if caught in a soft breakfast breeze. "Greetings, summoner," the figure intoned in a rich, buttery voice. "I am Amalord, first avatar of the sunny side. Who seeks to disrupt the sacred skillet?" Nari blinked. "That egg has a ghost." "No," said the figure, floating dramatically. "I am an egg elemental. And also technically a garnish." The rice ninjas stepped back in alarm, some dropping their paddles. Wasabi's shadow hissed and made a series of complicated hand gestures that looked like he was trying to undo a cursed friendship bracelet. "Begone, yoke demon." "I would," Amalord said, "but I sense hunger. Deep, unfulfilled culinary longing in this land. A war is coming, and only those who master the 5 sacred breakfasts may prevail." Kazuki's eyes lit up. "That's us." "No it isn't," said Nari, now drinking soda directly from a backpack tube. "Yes it is," Daisuke said, holding up a bouquet shaped like a waffle iron. "We've got heart, spirit, and access to marginal cooking talent." Amalord hovered higher. "Then you must embark on the grand breakfast quest. Seek the pancake monks of Syrup Valley. Only they can teach you the first of the 5 sacred breakfast arts." "Wait," Tomo said, still trapped in the bin. "Is this actually happening?" "It is," Amalord replied. "And if you survive, brunch shall never be the same." With that, the egg spirit exploded into sparkles and a faint smell of French toast. The yolk stone dimmed, but now pulsed like a GPS with chronic indigestion, vibrating slightly whenever pointed southeast. Lady Mochiko, watching the whole thing from a distance via grain crystal binoculars, muttered something unintelligible before snapping her fingers. "So. He has awakened the yolk." Councilmember Daikin peeked over her shoulder. "Should I order reinforcements?" "No. This is no longer a breakfast infraction." She turned, dramatic wind flapping her rice cape. "This is war." Back at the lake, the ninjas had vanished. Or possibly they were just hiding inside nearby vending machines. Their disguises were very good. Either way, Kazuki and the gang now stood at the beginning of something far bigger than any of them had expected. "What do we do now?" Daisuke asked. Kazuki pointed toward the distant hills, the wind rustling through his bathrobe. "We quest. We grow. We cook. But most of all, we brunch." "Please never say that again," Nari muttered. Tomo finally wriggled free from the bin, covered in recycling stickers. "I hate all of this." And so, the gang set off toward Syrup Valley, where mysterious monks and pancake secrets awaited. Their journey had officially begun. Whether it would end in triumph, doom, or chronic indigestion, only time, and a truly ridiculous series of events, would tell. By midday, Kazuki's team had traveled exactly 20 meters before realizing they had no food, no map, and only one pair of functioning shoes between them. Daisuke's chainsaw had begun humming show tunes for no discernible reason, and Nari was experiencing the early stages of melon soda withdrawal. In short, spirits were high. "All right," Kazuki said, squinting at the horizon. "According to the Yoke Stone, Syrup Valley is just past those dramatically misty mountains and through that suspiciously glowing forest." Tomo frowned. "You're holding it upside down." "Am I?" Kazuki flipped the stone over and it immediately began vibrating like a raccoon stuck in a washing machine. "Ah. That explains the tremors." The path ahead, dubbed Cinnamon Trail by the only sign in the area, which had been partially eaten by ants, was paved with syrup-drenched cobblestones and lined with tall maple trees that occasionally whispered ominous breakfast puns when the wind blew just right. "Did that tree just say, 'Waffle Vengeance'?" Nari asked. "Probably," Daisuke said, carefully pruning a shrub into the shape of a pancake stack. "There's sap sentience. Unstable but polite." The journey was uneventful until they reached the Bridge of Butter, an ancient crossing held together by optimism, melted margarine, and what looked like the collective anxiety of 17 engineers who never passed inspection. Waiting at the foot of the bridge was a hunched figure in a trench coat made entirely of napkins. He wore a cravat, monocle, and a hat shaped like a croissant. "Halt," the figure declared, dramatically pulling back his hood to reveal an elderly man with toast crumbs in his beard and the faint scent of syrup about his collar. "None may pass unless they answer." Kazuki held up a hand. "No riddles." The old man looked mildly offended. It wasn't going to be a riddle. It was going to be a briefly confusing statement followed by a bribe request. "Go ahead," Kazuki said. The man cleared his throat. "I am Sir Crumpet III, retired pancake monk and full-time bridge troll. I guard this bridge from butter thieves, maple smugglers, and gluten anarchists. My price is simple, one novelty mug and a photo of a squirrel playing badminton." Everyone turned to Daisuke. He sighed, pulled out his wallet, and wordlessly handed over a photo. "Third drawer, bottom left. I have many." Sir Crumpet studied the photo like it contained deep meaning, nodded solemnly, and bowed. "Pass, ye children of chaos. The syrup awaits." As the group crossed the unstable bridge, while occasionally sticking to the surface, Tomo muttered, "Did no one think to ask why we're going to Syrup Valley?" "Because breakfast destiny," Kazuki replied confidently. "And also," added Nari, "that egg ghost told us to." Daisuke nodded. "And we all agreed to listen to the glowing man inside a rock. This is the life we chose." The moment they stepped onto the valley path, everything changed. The trees grew taller. The air turned thicker, infused with the scent of maple and judgment. And far ahead, nestled between syrup waterfalls and caramel cliffs, stood the monastery of the Golden Flapjack, a massive circular temple with a domed roof shaped like an actual pancake, steam perpetually rising from its surface. "Whoa," Kazuki whispered. "It's beautiful. Is it edible?" Nari asked, rubbing her stomach. "No," said a voice behind them. They spun around to see a woman in flowing breakfast robes, her eyes hidden behind flapjack-shaped glasses, her hands clasped around a whisk carved from solid gold. "I am Abbess Maple, head of the Pancake Monks," she said, bowing stiffly. "And you are the fools disturbing our valley with your chaotic energies and questionable dietary philosophies." Kazuki bowed. "We are breakfast seekers, not brunch invaders." "Silence," she snapped. You bring the yoke stone. That changes things. Come. The monastery gates opened automatically, accompanied by a chime that suspiciously resembled the sound of butter sizzling. Inside, dozens of monks trained in silence, flipping invisible pancakes, balancing syrup jars on their heads, and meditating while holding griddles over open flames. "Welcome to the sacred pan," Abbess Maple said, gesturing toward the central chamber. "You may stay 3 days. You will train in the first art, the flower of focus. If you survive, we will discuss the next step." "If?" Tomo whispered. "If?" Their training began immediately. Day 1 was spent walking barefoot across sizzling pancake griddles while reciting ancient recipes backward. Nari caught fire twice and briefly became bilingual in Italian. Day 2 involved balancing a pat of butter on one's nose while dodging syrup-coated darts shot from high-speed waffle launchers. Daisuke was extremely good at this. No one asked why. Day 3 was the worst. The test of inner batter. Each member had to sit in complete silence while being pelted with flour, whispered insults from a judgmental pancake puppet, and occasional haunting questions like, "Why do you eat breakfast for dinner?" Kazuki broke halfway through and tried to debate the puppet. He lost. Still, the monks were impressed. "Your spirits are dense and chaotic, like an overmixed batter," Abbess Maple said on the 3rd night. "But there is potential. The second art awaits. If you dare seek it." "I absolutely dare," Kazuki said. "Where is it?" "The Temple of Toast," she replied. "But beware, the butter pirates." Nari's soda can fell from her hand. "You're kidding." "I never joke," Abbess Maple said. "They control the sea of margarine. They will not let you pass easily." Tomo groaned. "Of course this involves pirates." Kazuki grinned. "Then we'll fight them. With honor. With spirit. And with advanced breakfast-based martial arts." "No," Daisuke corrected, flexing with his chainsaw. "With flowers. Explosive ones." Abbess Maple raised a hand and offered Kazuki a parting gift, a syrup scroll, marked with the emblem of the sacred griddle. "Go," she said. "But remember, the Rice Council is watching. And they fear what you might become." As the team departed the monastery, heading toward the coast and whatever nightmare lay ahead, none of them noticed the small drone high in the sky, shaped like a fortune cookie. Transmitting everything back to Lady Mochiko's secret bunker. "They've mastered the first art," Daikin whispered. Mochiko scowled. "Then we must unleash the Cornbread Syndicate." And thus, things escalated again. The sea of margarine was not a metaphor. It was an actual body of churned yellow liquid that stretched for miles, glistening under the sun like a giant puddle of regret and dairy-based dreams. It was warm, surprisingly buoyant, and, according to at least one travel brochure Kazuki found at a vending machine, it was slightly edible if your standards are low. The group arrived at the port of Crumpton, Greece, a town known for two things: its greasy boardwalk and its complete lack of concern for laws regarding food handling. "We need a boat," Kazuki announced, hands on hips, standing proudly in front of a floating hot dog stand that had been converted into a ferry terminal. Tomo pointed across the water at a massive, skull-shaped vessel flying a flag made of toast. "That's the butter pirate's ship. The melted wench. I assume diplomacy is off the table." "Unless it's a very sticky table," Nari muttered, cracking open a melon soda and using the tab to scratch a mosquito bite. They scouted the dock area. Everywhere, the influence of the butter pirates could be seen: black market butter sculptures, outlawed margarine murals, and a suspicious number of parrots that insulted you in rhyming pastry-based slang. One parrot screamed, "Your mother was a croissant and your father smelt of non-dairy spread." Kazuki nodded solemnly. This place has character. A shady man with a pancake over one eye approached them near a barrel labeled, "Not Dynamite." He whispered, "You seek the pirates?" Kazuki whispered back, "Are you a contact?" "No," the man said, then stole Daisuke's wallet and vanished into a pile of baguettes. Eventually, they tracked down someone who actually had information, Captain Bagelbeard, a former butter pirate now retired and living in a lighthouse made of croutons. Bagelbeard had a beard made entirely of artisanal bagels. He spoke with the authority of someone who had both lived through 10 dairy blockades and once arm-wrestled a cheesecake to death. "You want to cross the sea of margarine?" he said, chewing on a garlic knot. "You got two choices: rent a boat from Slippery Steve, who charges in fondue coupons, or hijack the melted wench herself." Kazuki's eyes sparkled. "Let's steal it." Tomo groaned. "Of course." Daisuke raised a finger. "We could ask politely." "No time for peace," Kazuki said. "This is a mission of justice." "It's a mission of breakfast," Nari corrected. "Same thing," Kazuki replied. They waited until nightfall. Using a combination of smoke bombs, pancake-shaped disguises, and a well-timed kazoo distraction, they managed to sneak aboard the melted wench. It was even more absurd up close. The deck was coated in a layer of hardened margarine that made every step a graceful near-death experience. The cannons were made from old fondue fountains, and every lantern was a hollowed-out cheese wheel. The butter pirates were asleep in hammocks made of string cheese. They snored like narwhals. Kazuki tiptoed toward the helm. But just as he touched the wheel, a trapdoor opened beneath him. He landed in the brig, directly in front of Captain Grilda the Slatherer, leader of the butter pirates and feared across 7 food groups. She was a towering woman with butter knives strapped to her arms and a stovepipe hat that constantly leaked gravy. Her voice was deep, rich, and laced with cholesterol. "You dare step foot on my boat," she growled. "Do you not know the name Grilda? Do you not fear my legend?" Kazuki blinked. "Actually, I thought you were a giant cheese statue at first." Grilda smiled. It was not a comforting smile. "You've got guts, robe boy. I like that. I'll spread you thin." Before Kazuki could respond with something vaguely witty and breakfast-themed, the door exploded open. Tomo, Nari, and Daisuke stormed in. Daisuke wielded a bouquet of poppies laced with cayenne. Nari had fashioned a whip out of Twizzlers. Tomo was somehow dual-wielding soup ladles and shouting, "I am the recipe." The fight was glorious and bizarre. Butter flew like confetti. Spatulas clanged. Someone started playing an accordion from somewhere unknown. Daisuke spritzed 2 pirates with floral mist so potent it made them reflect on their past choices and leave the ship voluntarily. Kazuki wrestled Grilda to a standstill by luring her into an argument about the ethical superiority of waffles over crepes. It got very personal. Eventually, the pirates were defeated, not killed, just mildly inconvenienced and covered in jam. Grilda, tied to her own gravy keg, scowled at Kazuki. "You'll regret this, boy. We were protecting Syrup Valley from what comes next." Kazuki paused. "Wait, what do you mean?" Grilda smirked. "You think this is about eggs? Pancakes? No. Something stirs beneath the surface of sauce. Something ancient." "Oh no," Nari muttered. "Is this going to turn into a soup-based horror plot?" "No horror," Kazuki said quickly. This is still a comedy. Grilda cackled. You'll see. The cornbread syndicate is just the appetizer. Tomo sighed. There's always a syndicate. With the pirates left behind on the docks, Kazuki's team took control of the melted wench and began their voyage across the Sea of Margarine. The wind in their faces, the smell of stale toast in the air, and the yoke stone humming softly in Kazuki's robe. They didn't yet know what was waiting across the sea. But they knew one thing for sure. Someone was building a breakfast empire. And Kazuki? He intended to burn it to the ground and make an omelette out of the ashes. As the melted wench drifted across the Sea of Margarine, leaving a trail of oily swirls and moral ambiguity behind it, Kazuki stood at the helm like a man who definitely knew what he was doing but absolutely did not. He wore a life vest shaped like a giant banana and squinted into the horizon as if daring it to challenge his authority. Land ho! Tomo shouted from the crow's nest, which was just a repurposed popcorn bucket strapped to a flagpole. And it's crispy. They had arrived at the Isle of Toasters, a landmass shaped like a single slice of artisanal bread, charred at the edges, steaming gently in the morning sun. The coastline was jagged and uneven, made entirely of baked crouton cliffs and sourdough sand. A strange aroma lingered in the air, half spiritual incense, half burnt breakfast. In the center of the island stood the Temple of Toast, a pyramid-like structure built from sacred bread bricks, constantly toasted by solar panels and maintained by a secretive order of monks known only as the Crust. The Crust doesn't take visitors, Nari muttered, sipping cautiously on a warm can of melon soda. They'll take us, Kazuki said confidently, hopping onto the dock and immediately slipping on a pat of butter someone had carelessly discarded. He landed in a pile of breadcrumbs. Daisuke helped him up, brushing sesame seeds from his shoulders. Let's not offend them. These are crust fundamentalists. I once saw them duel over the ethics of trimming sandwich edges. As they approached the temple gates, two guards stepped forward, both wearing ceremonial toaster helmets and wielding baguette-shaped spears. Who dares seek the toast path? One guard demanded. Kazuki stepped forward. We are the chosen few. Keepers of the yoke stone, survivors of the margarine crossing, part-time freelance chefs, and full-time chaos specialists. The guards blinked slowly, then stepped aside. Sounds legit, one of them said. Inside, the temple walls glowed faintly with radiant golden heat, casting a warm light on ancient murals depicting the Battle of the Buttery Divide, the Rye Rebellion, and the infamous Unleavened Siege. A giant loaf-shaped altar loomed in the center chamber, its edges steaming. An elder monk emerged from behind the altar, his robes made from woven slices of whole wheat. I am Grand Master Ryuz, first of the crust, he intoned, voice crispy with wisdom. You've arrived at a time of great crumbling. The balance of the breakfast realm is breaking. Because of the Rice Council? Kazuki asked. No, Ryuz said. Because of internal schisms. The sourdough faction has broken away. They seek to install a new breadocracy, one without crust. They call themselves the Softliners. Nari raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Their symbol is a sandwich with the edges cut off. Yes, Ryuz said, grimacing. Savages. Kazuki clutched the yoke stone, which pulsed faintly in response to the rising tension. Can you teach us the second art? He asked. We've mastered the flower of focus. We've flipped pancakes on lava and dodged syrup darts. What comes next? The second art, said Ryuz, is the burn of discipline. He clapped once. Flames ignited around the altar. Several monks began slicing loaves while blindfolded and standing on one leg atop sizzling toasters. It smelled amazing. You must each create your own sacred toast, Ryu said. It must be balanced, elegant, and capable of withstanding 3 challenges: the heat of judgment, the crunch test, and the sauce slide. Kazuki saluted. Bring it on. For the next 2 days, the team trained under the most bizarre conditions imaginable. Kazuki attempted dozens of combinations, each one exploding due to his overuse of novelty jams. Tomo insisted toast should be folded in half like a taco. The monks threatened to exile him. Nari added melon soda to hers. The result was technically edible, legally considered a class 3 hallucinogen, and deeply upsetting to watch. Daisuke crafted a toast so harmonious in texture and scent that it made 3 monks weep and temporarily forget their own names. Finally, on the 3rd day, they presented their creations. Kazuki's toast, spicy rye with ghost pepper jam and tiny edible googly eyes. Nari's toast, melon soda-infused focaccia topped with regret and sea salt. Tomo's toast, controversial, folded sourdough with spicy mayo and existential doubt. Daisuke's toast, sunflower bread infused with lavender, shaped like a dove mid-flight. The monks judged them harshly. Yours is unholy, Ryuz told Nari. And yours, he said to Kazuki, is a hate crime against brunch. Still, Daisuke passed. And, to everyone's shock, so did Tomo. Your flavor balance is horrific, Ryuz admitted, but your innovation is terrifying. You pass. With 2 of their team now burn certified, the monks offered a final warning. The crust is under siege, Ryuz said. The soft-liners plan to storm the temple during the Festival of Warmth. Kazuki perked up. Let us help. No, said Ryuz. You must go. The next stage awaits, the Croissant Caverns of the Crescent Order. There, you will learn the 3rd art. Before they could ask what it entailed, a loud crack echoed through the temple. The eastern wall collapsed. Dozens of warriors in white, crustless uniforms stormed in, wielding bread knives and shouting, "No more edge oppression. Toast without borders." Soft liners, a monk cried. A full-on toast civil war broke out inside the temple. Kazuki's team was forced to retreat, sliding down a buttery escape ramp into a hidden tunnel behind the altar. They tumbled into a dark, yeasty passageway lit only by the glow of the yoke stone. As they caught their breath, Daisuke looked back. We could have helped. Later, Kazuki said, adjusting his bathrobe. We'll return once we've learned the next art. And what is the 3rd art? Tomo asked, brushing crumbs from his eyebrows. Kazuki turned to face the tunnel's end, where the unmistakable smell of fresh pastry wafted in. He grinned. Laminate fury. The tunnel from the Temple of Toast led them deep underground. The air grew warmer with every step, thick with humidity and the intoxicating scent of rising dough. The walls were slick with melted butter, and faint accordion music echoed from some unseen corner like a romantic nightmare. I feel like I'm being basted from the inside, Tomo muttered, wiping his forehead. Good, Kazuki said, licking a drip of mystery glaze from the wall. Means we're getting close. You shouldn't lick that, Nari said. That's not glaze. That's tunnel juice. The passage opened into a massive underground cavern lit by bioluminescent baguettes and floating orbs of clarified butter. Towers of laminated pastry spiraled up like golden stalagmites, and at the center stood an enormous monastery carved into the shape of a giant croissant. This is it, Daisuke whispered reverently. The Crescent Monastery. A trio of robed figures emerged from the butter mist. Their robes were layered, delicate, and flaky, just like the pastries they represented. Their leader was a tall woman with powdered sugar in her hair and a scarf that crackled like phyllo. "I am Sister Mill, of the Crescent Order," she said. "You seek the third art, laminate fury." Kazuki nodded. "Yes. We're on a quest to master all 5 breakfast arts before the Rice Council turns the world into a rigid, flavorless bureaucracy. Also, we're kind of just vibing at this point," Nari added, opening another soda. Sister Mill gestured to the glowing croissant structure behind her. "To master laminate fury, you must embrace the pastry within. Only through perfect layering of mind, body, and dough can you unlock the flakiest of powers." "What happens if we mess up?" Tomo asked. "You explode." "Oh. Cool." They were led into the butter chamber, a sauna-like training arena where the walls oozed golden steam and the floor was one continuous sheet of puff pastry. "Your trial begins now," Sister Mill declared. "You have 48 hours to laminate yourselves into spiritual alignment. If you survive, you will emerge crispy, golden, and reborn." The Crescent monks snapped their fingers. Suddenly, Kazuki and the others were wrapped in aprons and thrown into giant mixing bowls. It was time to suffer. Lamination Phase 1, mental layering. They were spun like pizza dough while being read philosophical quotes about croissants. Each fold, one monk intoned, is a choice. Each chill, a consequence. Tomo wept openly. "I'm emotionally underproofed." Lamination Phase 2, emotional buttering. This phase involved confronting past breakfast regrets. Kazuki had to relive the day he confused hollandaise for glue in elementary school. Daisuke faced the trauma of underseasoned scones. Nari confessed to accidentally inventing a cursed Pop-Tart that haunted her toaster for 6 months. "You were forgiven," Sister Mill whispered, smearing a layer of emotional butter on their psyches. Lamination Phase 3, physical folding. This one hurt. They were folded repeatedly like dough, squished, flopped, buttered, then chilled in oversized walk-in fridges while being slapped with spatulas of critique. "You lack flake," shouted one monk. "You overbaked your personality," shouted another. Tomo briefly became sentient steam. Finally, after 48 hours of culinary torment, they emerged from the training chamber steaming, shiny, and exuding pure laminate fury. Their auras crackled with buttery confidence. Their skin glistened with golden flakes. Kazuki held up his hand. It shimmered with pastry power. "I feel delicious." Nari high-fived him. Her palm left a sugar imprint. Sister Mill approached. "You are now crescent-touched. Your journey continues." She handed them each a token shaped like a croissant spiral. "You must now seek the 4th art, the sausage principle. It lies beyond the hash-brown highlands, guarded by the meat shamans of Bratwurst Keep." Before Kazuki could enthusiastically shout something reckless, a voice echoed through the cavern. A new presence had arrived. A tall figure stood at the edge of the croissant stairs, cloaked in shadows and condiments. Ketchup dripped from his gloves. Mustard stained his boots. He wore a mask shaped like a smiling toaster. "Who dares disturb the laminate rite?" Sister Mill barked. The figure raised a gloved hand and hurled a packet of hot sauce across the room. It landed at Kazuki's feet and hissed ominously. "I am Sir Squeeze, Herald of the Hidden Pantry," he said, voice filtered through a speaker embedded in his hat. "And I come with a warning." Kazuki stepped forward, new croissant energy flaking off him like edible glitter. "We don't take ketchup seriously here." Sir Squeeze ignored him. "The cornbread syndicate grows stronger." The Rice Council has summoned the Forbidden Oat Prophet. They seek to end breakfast, and begin dinner. Everyone gasped. Dinner? Nari asked. Breakfast, for dinner. No, Daisuke said solemnly. Dinner as breakfast. The reversal. The unthinkable. Sir Squeeze pulled a scroll from his condiment belt and flung it to the floor. It unrolled to reveal a map of secret pantry routes, underground food bunkers, and rebel strongholds. You are not the only ones resisting the council, he said. The brunch resistance has agents across the realm. Meet us at the Moon Yoke Inn, 3 days from now. Then he vanished into a puff of powdered sugar. Everyone stood in stunned silence. Finally, Tomo whispered, I'm starting to think this quest is bigger than breakfast. Kazuki cracked his knuckles, pastry flakes sparkling in the torchlight. It's not just breakfast anymore. It's a revolution. They packed their things, ate a ceremonial croissant with reverence, and prepared to cross into the hash-brown highlands, where sausage secrets and meat magic awaited. Above them, far away in the highest tower of the Rice Council, Lady Mochiko stared out the window as her emergency oat alarm began to blink red. They've reached laminate fury, she said. Send word to the Grits Tribunal. And alert, the Butter Witch. Councilmember Daikin trembled. But she hasn't been summoned in over, I know what I'm doing. Mochiko snapped. If these fools learn the sausage principle, we're finished. Far below, the melted wench sat anchored in butter water, gently sizzling in the sun. War was coming. And it smelled like sausage. The hash-brown highlands were less highlands, and more, a massive golden field of fried potatoes and lightly salted chaos. As the team approached from the south ridge, now fully laminated and still shedding croissant flakes with every footstep, the smell of crisping hash browns wafted through the air like a breakfast siren call. This place is sacred, Daisuke whispered, removing his sandals and stepping barefoot into the sizzling soil. Each hash brown here is born naturally. Grown wild. Fried by the sun. Untouched by spatula. Tomo knelt down, holding a perfectly square chunk of golden potato. It's still warm. Still crunchy. They say the land here speaks in sizzle, Kazuki muttered, holding up the yoke stone, which had begun to vibrate in long, greasy pulses. And it's calling. The land was unlike anything they'd seen before, patches of grated potato bush, golden hashbrush trees, and wild rivers of gravy carving through the valleys. Strange potato-shaped birds chirped chzzzzz from treetop frying pans. But it wasn't all crunchy serenity. The group soon stumbled upon a massive sausage totem, carved from stone and glistening with ancient grease. Beneath it stood a lone figure, cloaked in bratwurst-patterned robes and wielding a double-pronged fork the size of a bicycle. Who comes seeking the sausage principle, the figure boomed, as gravy thunder cracked overhead. Kazuki stepped forward. We do. We've learned the flower of focus, the burn of discipline, and achieved laminate fury. We're here to unlock the fourth art. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a thick-bearded warrior with bacon rings braided into his hair. His name badge said, "Hello, my name is Grand Brat." "You're late," Grand Brat said. "The meat shamans don't wait long for flaky outsiders." "We're crispy," Kazuki corrected. "Not flaky. Quiet, dough child." He turned to lead them into the meat lodge. A round, sizzling structure built from stacked sausage links and held together by melted cheese mortar. Inside, a circle of meat shamans sat cross-legged on heated meat stones, meditating while their stomachs growled in rhythmic harmony. "This is the Lodge of Grease," Grand Brat said. "Here we practice the sausage principle, balance, density, and heat. You will train in the 3 pillars: casing, juiciness, and snap. Nari raised a hand. Wait, are we still talking about martial arts or are we just aggressively describing sausage now? Yes, Grand Brat replied. The training began immediately. Pillar 1, casing. Each member was wrapped in sausage casings and rolled down a hill. Feel the resistance, a shaman yelled. Be the meat. Kazuki shouted something heroic before crashing into a ham-shaped boulder and bouncing gracefully into a bush made of tater tots. Pillar 2. Juiciness. They were sealed inside giant sausages and pressure-cooked to simulate internal meat wisdom. Tomo passed out twice and had a vision of a talking omelet who told him he was a mistake but also special. Pillar 3. Snap. The team was handed massive bratwursts and told to defend themselves against grease elementals, blobs of sentient drippings that screamed when struck. Nari, now wielding a brat staff, yelled, "I'm gonna cholesterol your face." Daisuke tamed his elemental with kindness and a bouquet of rosemary sausage links. After a grueling 2 days of sizzling meditation, aggressive meat philosophy, and one unfortunate incident involving mustard gas, actual mustard, the group emerged stronger, smellier, and spiritually denser. Kazuki, holding his newly forged grease saber, turned to Grand Brat. "We're ready." Grand Brat nodded. "You have passed the meat trial. You are now practitioners of the sausage principle. But beware. The cornbread syndicate watches." At that moment, a massive tremor shook the highlands. From the north, a column of steam and buttery fire rose into the sky. A giant gravy blimp appeared over the horizon, its hull emblazoned with a flaming muffin and the words, "Yield to the syndicate." "No," Grand Brat whispered. "They've sent the muffin lords." The gravy blimp released a barrage of cornbread commandos, short, square warriors with honey-glaze armor and grenade pouches full of biscuit crumbs. "Toast posers," they screamed, charging down the hill. Kazuki raised his grease saber. "We stand our ground." Tomo unsheathed his ladles. Nari slurped a soda, burped, and summoned a wave of caramel lightning. Daisuke launched a barrage of flour sausage bombs. What followed was the Battle of the Hash-Brown Highlands, a crunchy, greasy, buttery war of absurd proportions. Cornbread soldiers launched themselves from biscuit cannons. Meat shamans hurled flaming kielbasa. Hash-brown earth golems rose from the ground and body-slammed scone tanks. Kazuki fought hand-to-hand with a muffin knight wielding a cheese mace. "You'll never erase brunch," he shouted. "Brunch is a lie," the muffin screamed before exploding into crumbs. Eventually, with the power of sausage principle fully awakened and the timely arrival of a rogue omelet battalion led by Sir Squeeze, the cornbread syndicate was repelled. The gravy blimp retreated, trailing smoke and shame. Kazuki stood atop a battered hash-brown hill, staring at the battlefield strewn with breakfast debris. "We held the line," he said. Nari kicked a broken scone. "They're getting bolder." Grand Brat limped over, one eyebrow singed. "You must leave now. The final art awaits." "The last piece." Daisuke nodded. "The fifth art." "Indeed," said Grand Brat. "It lies in the forbidden city of Hollandaise Hollow, deep within the forbidden drizzle zone. You must find the egg oracle." Tomo groaned. "Why does everything sound like a breakfast-themed fever dream?" "Because it is," Kazuki replied. "And we haven't even gotten to the syrup dragons yet." As the team packed their gear, patched their robes, and prepared to travel east, a shadow watched them from afar, high atop a waffle spire. Lady Mochiko stood beside a new ally, a cloaked figure surrounded by oat steam and humming with forbidden energy. Is that the oat prophet? Daikin whispered. Mochiko nodded. Soon, they will seek the fifth art. But they will never reach it. The cloaked figure turned. A single, cold packet of instant oatmeal floated beside them. The time has come, the prophet said. Let us awaken the extinction protocol. Far below, Kazuki held the yoke stone aloft. Next stop. Hollandaise Hollow. The path to Hollandaise Hollow wound through the forbidden drizzle zone, a misty expanse where the air was heavy, visibility was low, and everything was somehow constantly slightly damp, even thoughts. The team moved cautiously, cloaked in steam, their footsteps squishing with each step. I feel like I'm walking through a cloud made of wet butter, Tomo muttered, using a napkin to dry his eyelids for the third time that hour. This place is legendary, Daisuke whispered, marveling at a glowing lemon tree sprouting whipped egg yolks instead of fruit. Hollandaise Hollow is said to be the birthplace of sauces. The oldest condiments were brewed here, before time, before seasoning packets, even before preheating. Kazuki held the yolk stone in both hands. It had become warmer, smoother. Almost, sentient. It began to hum. The drizzle around them thickened, turning gold. A light appeared ahead, pulsing slowly. And through it, the group saw the hollow, a giant crater carved into the earth, its basin covered in glowing sauce pools, boiling gently like tiny yellow hot tubs. Floating over the center was a massive egg-shaped temple made of interlocking shells. That's it, Kazuki breathed. The shell spire. As they approached, the temperature rose. Golden steam curled around their ankles, whispering half-formed breakfast mantras. The door to the temple opened with a hiss of lemon and butter vapor. A voice echoed inside. Enter, seekers of the final art. Lay your yokes bare. Inside, the shell spire was cavernous and surreal. The walls pulsed like a living kitchen, and at the center sat the egg oracle, a giant, floating poached egg suspended in mid-air, wrapped in a translucent golden membrane that shimmered like sunshine filtered through regret. The egg spoke. Greetings, disciples of disorder. I am Orbella, first yoke of the sauce age. You seek the fifth art. Kazuki stepped forward. Yes. We've mastered the flower of focus, the burn of discipline, laminate fury, and the sausage principle. We've fought pirates, survived explosions, and gotten emotional in bread monasteries. We're ready. Orbella pulsed. Are you truly prepared to learn the flow of Hollandaise? The sacred fifth art is not about power, or flavor, or cholesterol. It is about balance. Nari frowned. Didn't we do balance already? Not this kind, Orbella said. This is sauce balance. The kind that holds brunch together. Without it, eggs are chaos. Muffins are dry. Worlds crumble. Bring it on, Kazuki said. The egg oracle nodded. Then let the trial of emulsion begin. The sauce trial, each member was handed a whisk, a bowl, and a cursed apron stitched with ancient breakfast runes. They were to make the perfect hollandaise, by hand, in silence, while blindfolded, standing on floating toast planks that drifted lazily around a boiling butter pool. One wrong move, and they'd plunge into the sauce of regret, a semi-sentient mix of all failed sauces in history. I hate this already, Tomo mumbled, wobbling as his toast drifted under a ceiling leak. I think I just whisked a ghost, Nari whispered. Daisuke was eerily calm, his whisk movements so smooth they created a faint humming. Flowers began blooming on his apron. Kazuki was struggling. His sauce kept curdling. His mind raced. What is balance? What is sauce? He began to spiral. Orbella's voice boomed, "You are thinking too much, child of chaos." Kazuki dropped his whisk. "But I've done everything. I've trained. I've nearly died. I've been lightly sautéed." "Exactly," said the oracle. "You've done everything, except let go." He closed his eyes. He breathed. And for once, he just cooked. He felt the sauce come together. Not through effort, but through flow. Like music. Like magic. Like forgiveness, but with lemon. The sauce shimmered. The oracle pulsed with approval. He has done it. He has achieved the flow of hollandaise. Nari's toast snapped in half. She fell into the sauce of regret and emerged covered in warm trauma, muttering in French. Daisuke, of course, passed flawlessly. His sauce whispered compliments to those who ate it. Tomo was, given a passing grade 4, creative interpretation, though it was noted his sauce contained at least 2 fingernail clippings and the concept of shame. Kazuki stood tall. The yolk stone now pulsed like a heartbeat, golden and strong. "You have completed the 5 arts," Orbella said. "The path ahead lies through the final battle. The Rice Council knows. They prepare." Suddenly, the hollow shook. The walls split. Above the temple, the clouds parted, and descending through the drizzle came a horrifying sight, the oat prophet. Wrapped in robes of gluten-free malice, floating atop a giant rice cake, their face hidden by a granola visor. "I see you, egg-born," the prophet hissed. Lady Mochiko hovered behind them on a jet-powered rice cracker. "It ends here. The extinction protocol is active. You will be erased from breakfast history." "Wait, that's an actual plan." Nari coughed, wiping sauce from her ear. "I thought that was a joke." "No joke," said Mochiko. "We will replace all breakfast with dinner." The sky turned orange. Lightning struck a sausage tree. The hollow boiled violently. Orbella screamed, "Run!" The final course has begun. The team barely escaped the collapsing shell spire. Golden sauce geysers burst from the ground. Omelette serpents hissed from beneath the earth. The sky rained down cursed cereal. Kazuki turned to his friends. "It's time," he said. "No more training. No more stalling. We go to Gozaru City. We face the council. And we serve justice, sunny side up." Daisuke nodded. "With flowers." Nari punched the sky. "With soda lightning." Tomo sighed. "With confusion and physical discomfort." And so, they fled the hollow, masters of all 5 arts, united in purpose, dripping in sauce. In the sky behind them, the oat prophet raised a single spoon. And the extinction began. Gozaru City didn't just shimmer in the morning sun, it glared. Tall, glinting skyscrapers shaped like rice towers rose over streets lined with vending machines, bureaucracy, and an ever-present sense of light indigestion. But today, a new tension choked the skyline. Something was off. A thick fog of oat dust hung in the air. The city's normal breakfast bustle was gone. The pancake kiosks were shuttered. The waffle crossings were barricaded. Even the pigeons were wearing tiny helmets. Kazuki, dressed in a catering apron with the logo, the brunch hunch, stood in the back of a food delivery hover truck parked outside the Gozaru Civic Dome, headquarters of the Rice Council, and now the fortress of the Oat Prophet. He peeked around the truck door. "All right. Here's the plan." "No," Tomo said immediately. Stop saying that. Every time you say that, something explodes, and I end up covered in butter shrapnel. But this time it's different, Kazuki insisted. We're caterers. Nari adjusted her massive soda-filled cooler backpack and nodded. Honestly, it's the most plausible idea you've ever had. Daisuke was already wheeling a floral centerpiece shaped like a tactical quiche. Their mission: infiltrate the Civic Dome, disable the Muffin Mech assembly line, and confront Lady Mochiko before the Oat Prophet completed the egg-stinction device, an egg-shaped bomb that could erase the entire concept of breakfast from time itself. Inside the dome, the air was too clean. Sterile. The walls were lined with minimalist rice art, bland yet intimidating. Security drones buzzed overhead like aggressive teapots. Kazuki and the crew were waved through the main gate thanks to their forged catering credentials, which Kazuki had definitely not printed at a gas station an hour earlier. "Good morning," the front desk clerk chirped. "Please state the theme of your buffet." Kazuki smiled. Unhinged rustic fusion with hints of narrative despair. The clerk blinked, nodded, and pressed a button. "You're cleared for Sublevel C, Event Crisis Hall." As they descended into the lower levels, they passed through corridors guarded by towering security muffins, robotic sentries with raisin eyes and Jamcore lasers. "Those are the muffin mechs," Tomo whispered. "They were just a myth." "Everything's a myth until it tries to kill you," Nari replied, slapping a magnetic pulse chip onto one of the mechs as they walked past. "This'll short-circuit them when we're ready." They reached Sublevel C. The place was enormous. Conveyor belts rolled out muffin-shaped war machines. Sparks flew. Butter cannons were being mounted. A voice on the intercom declared, "Egg concepts at 12% deletion. Hollandaise memories currently unstable. Target: complete egg erasure in T-6 hours." "This is worse than we thought," Daisuke said, clutching his bouquet of defensive herbs. The group split up. Kazuki and Nari headed for the extinction device, using a decoy tray of celebratory churros to sneak past guards. Tomo and Daisuke slipped into the mech control center to plant their final disruption codes and redirect the muffin AI logic toward pastry existentialism. As they snuck through corridors lined with glowing oat nodes, Lady Mochiko watched from her command tower. "They've arrived," she muttered. "And they're wearing aprons. How deeply disrespectful." The Oat Prophet floated behind her, encased in a shimmering aura of lactose-free doom. "It matters not," the Prophet hissed. "Their sauce means nothing now. The extinction is almost complete." Back below, the team reached the core chamber, where the extinction device hovered in a shaft of cold lemon light. It was an enormous golden egg with pulsing veins of white vinegar and a yolk nucleus that throbbed like an unstable star. Kazuki stepped forward. "Okay, science time. Nari, what do we hit to stop this thing?" Nari popped open a soda and sprayed it across the control panel. The yolk stuttered. "Sodium and citric acid don't mix well with quantum breakfast technology," she said casually. "I got a B- in destructive chemistry." Suddenly, alarms blared. A voice echoed through the chamber, "Unauthorized buffet access detected." From the walls, muffin mechs deployed. "Time for the override," Tomo said through the communicator. Back in the mech bay, he slammed a greasy ladle onto the master console. Muffin eyes dimmed. Butter cannons turned inward. Daisuke gently pressed the big red button labeled, "Activate Existential Dread Subroutine." The mechs paused. One of them blinked slowly and said, "I am a pastry with violence in my heart, why?" Then it powered down. Dozens followed suit. Control center secure, Tomo said. Device destabilized, Nari added. But there's one problem. She pointed upward. Lady Mochiko descended from the ceiling on a floating rice saucer, flanked by her elite pudding guard and the oat prophet, now pulsing with dangerous omega grain energy. You fools, Mochiko snarled. Do you think sauce can stop destiny? This was never about breakfast. This was about order. Eggs are chaos. Rice is stable. Breakfast must submit to law. Kazuki drew his grease saber. You wouldn't understand. Breakfast isn't about order. He stepped forward. It's about hope. It's about butter, shouted Nari, flinging soda bolts. Daisuke threw his bouquet into the air. The petals formed the words, "Truth is YOLK." Tomo dual-wielded soup ladles and screamed a war cry he immediately regretted. The battle was on. Kazuki clashed blades with Mochiko in midair, their weapons sizzling on impact. Nari took on the pudding guard using a melon soda bazooka she'd borrowed from a vending machine. Daisuke and Tomo tackled the oat prophet together, pushing the fight into the extinction core. The device pulsed wildly, destabilizing further with every hit. At the climax of the battle, the yolk stone cracked open, releasing the spirit of Amalord, the egg elemental from the beginning. I have returned for the season finale, he boomed, wielding dual frying pans like thunder gods. Mochiko screamed as Amalord sent a burst of overcooked energy into her rice saucer, launching her through 3 walls and into a vat of emotionally neutral porridge. The oat prophet fell to their knees. You preserved the egg, Kazuki nodded. We preserved breakfast. The extinction device fizzled, then released a gentle puff of steam, and laid a small omelette. That's honestly just adorable, Nari muttered. The civic dome powered down. Across the city, vending machines rebooted. Pigeons removed their helmets. Morning was restored. Victory was won. But it wasn't over. Amalord hovered above them, solemn. You have defeated the Rice Council. Saved breakfast. But greater threats remain. Kazuki looked up, confused. Greater than muffins with lasers? Yes, Amalord said. Lunch. For a glorious 6 hours, Gozaru City was free. Vending machines played joyful jingles again. Children chased toast-shaped kites in the streets. Omelets were served with unashamed abandon. Even the pigeons stopped scheming. Kazuki reclined in a patio chair outside a small cafe called Existential Cravings, nursing a half-finished croissant and using the yolk stone as a paperweight. We did it, he said lazily, sunglasses reflecting the steam trails of freshly brewed tea. We actually saved breakfast. I know, said Nari, sipping melon soda from a champagne glass. I even added cheese to my toast this morning. No consequences. Daisuke was trimming hedges nearby using nothing but intense eye contact and a pair of tongs. Tomo, however, stood stiffly by the edge of the plaza, staring toward the western skyline. You feel that? He said. There's a disturbance. Kazuki sat up. Please don't say, disturbance in the sauce. We've been through that arc. No, Tomo replied. This one smells like mustard. Before anyone could react, a shadow fell across the plaza. A giant sandwich blimp emerged from the clouds, crustless, weaponized, and shaped like an angry club sandwich wearing monocles. From its undercarriage descended banners bearing the sigil of a teacup impaling a roast beef. Ah, not them, Nari groaned. The Sandwich Syndicate. The blimp's loudspeaker crackled to life. A regal, nasal voice boomed across the city. Citizens of Gozaru. You have wallowed in yolks long enough. Breakfast has overstayed its time slot. It is now, lunch o'clock. Screaming erupted as cucumber gas filled the air. Tiny drones dropped crustless sandwich samples on civilians, who instinctively reached for tea they didn't remember ordering. Daisuke clutched his flowers. No. Not the high noon tea. The cafe doors burst open. A butler bot stumbled out, tray shaking. We've been infused, it said. Chamomile has taken the manager. A second figure descended from the blimp, floating on a crouton-powered umbrella, dressed in fine silk napkins and wearing a monocle so sharp it could slice a tomato. Her presence sent birds fleeing and the city's sauce stocks plummeting. I am Lady Arugula of the Sandwich Syndicate, she announced. Lunch is balance. Lunch is formality. Lunch does not run around in a robe wielding a greasy sword. Kazuki stood. You can take my dignity, but you'll never take my hash browns. I don't want your hash browns, Lady Arugula snapped. I want order. Structured meals. Proper courses. Side salads that make sense. Then you've picked the wrong town, Tomo growled, brandishing a ladle. Arugula smirked. We'll see. You have 24 hours to surrender the yolk stone and convert to lunch protocol. Or we bring out the high noon teapot. Kazuki blinked. Wait, that's a weapon. It is, she said. And it steeps vengeance. With a dramatic flourish, she ascended back into the blimp. That night, a secret resistance meeting was held in the cellar of the Toasted Lair, a bar disguised as a cereal museum. Sir Squeeze, wearing a tactical jelly vest, unrolled a parchment map. The Sandwich Syndicate has controlled the Midday Realms for centuries, he said. But this is an open invasion. Why now? Nari asked. We just barely scrambled the Rice Council. Why not wait? Sir Squeeze tapped the map. Because breakfast united under one banner. You four, Kazuki, Nari, Tomo, Daisuke, you became a symbol. A threat. And now they're trying to rebrand us, Kazuki muttered. I saw a flyer outside selling brunch bowls with a lunch twist. It had tomatoes in it. Tomatoes. They'll erase the boundary between eggs and meat, Daisuke whispered. We'll be eating pickles at 9 a.m. Monsters, Tomo added. Sir Squeeze continued, the syndicate has established 3 forward positions. Crouton Alley, the Dijon Docks, and, worst of all, the Leafy Spire. A fortress powered by raw smugness and iced tea. They'll use the teapot, Nari said. I read about it. It launches steeped vapor that replaces your thoughts with calendar apps and desk salads. Kazuki slammed a fist on the table, knocking over a cinnamon shaker. We can't let that happen. So what do we do? Tomo asked. Declare brunch war. No, said Kazuki. We serve. We go undercover. We cater. The group blinked. I'm sorry, what? Nari asked. Think about it, he said. We sneak aboard the blimp during their launch gala. We pretend to be lunch chefs. We poison their buffet, not with toxins. With flavor. With breakfast. We break their minds from the inside. Sir Squeeze's eyes lit up. A brunch reversal. Daisuke nodded solemnly. A culinary coup. Tomo sighed. I just wanted to grow plants and hit things with spoons. But sure. Let's brunch bomb a sandwich zeppelin. The next day, the team, disguised in elegant catering uniforms made of biscuit linen and faux crust tuxedos, boarded the syndicate blimp during its afternoon tea abration. Classical kettle music played in the background. Sandwich sommeliers murmured about cured meats. Everyone wore pocket squares folded like prosciutto. Kazuki moved among the guests with a tray of savory egg toasts. Daisuke handed out flour-infused deviled eggs. Tomo operated the fondue fountain, which was just melted cheddar cheese disguised as something French. Nari snuck into the boiler room and rewired the teapot's targeting array using soda can tabs and chewing gum. Then, just as Lady Arugula raised a glass of tomato consommé and prepared to activate the high noon teapot, Kazuki flipped the main table. "This toast's for you." He launched a fried egg into the air. It struck the chandelier. Butter exploded. Nari kicked the teacart, releasing a torrent of soda onto the control panels. Tomo leapt over a sandwich station and began swinging tongs like nunchaku. Daisuke bloomed a garden of defensive time in the center of the ballroom. Panic erupted. "The brunchers are here," someone yelled. Lady Arugula spun, monocle crackling. "You fools! You'll doom us all." "No," Kazuki said, drawing his grease saber. "We're saving everyone. One breakfast at a time." As the blimp shuddered and alarms blared, Lady Arugula screamed, "You think you've won? The Sandwich Syndicate is just the surface. The Tea Council is brewing. They know no bounds." A hatch exploded open, and a metal teacup dropped into the room. It pulsed once. And said, "Would you like to schedule a brunch extinction?" The blimp burned slowly over Gozaru City, drifting sideways like a wounded baguette. Kazuki and his crew parachuted out using emergency napkin chutes, landing in the foamy remains of a decommissioned whipped cream fountain. The yoke stone glowed hot in Kazuki's pocket. It pulsed not with urgency, but with concern. "What was that thing?" Tomo asked, brushing frosting off his sleeves. "It spoke." "A teacup with a targeting system," Nari replied, checking her soda-scorched gloves. "Did you hear its voice? It sounded like it wanted to book a brunch genocide." Daisuke looked to the sky. Lady Arugula wasn't bluffing. "There's something bigger than the Sandwich Syndicate brewing." Kazuki stood, brushing icing off his robe. "The Tea Council. She said they were coming." Sir Squeeze, landing hard beside them in a cape made of laminated pancake, nodded solemnly. "They are. The Tea Council is the oldest of them all. They exist in the shadows of ritual and refinement. You don't find them. They steep. Then we steep back," Kazuki said, already checking a map drawn in crayon on a tortilla. "No," said Squeeze. "To fight the Tea Council, you'll need ancient power. The polite kind. The kind that knows what scone really means." Everyone looked confused. "There's a god," Squeeze explained. "Buried deep in Biscuit Ridge. Older than breakfast. Holier than gravy. Sealed in a toaster forged from forbidden crumbs. They call it, the Scone of Prophecy." Kazuki narrowed his eyes. "Then we go to Biscuit Ridge." The journey to the ridge Biscuit Ridge wasn't on any map. It was a forgotten mountain range at the edge of the flavored horizon, where cartographers got dizzy and butter lost cohesion. The terrain was dry and crumbly, with cliffs that split open under too much weight and valleys that echoed with the mutterings of cursed bakers. By the second day of hiking, Nari was down to her emergency soda tube. Tomo had fought and lost a staring contest with a rock that looked like a bagel, and Daisuke had begun arranging tiny biscuit cairns in geometric patterns no one understood. This place sucks the hydration right out of your soul, Nari muttered, kicking a crouton boulder. Kazuki nodded. The biscuit gods are stingy. Suddenly, a shadow fell across them. A massive sign jutted out from the cliffside. You are now entering Biscuit Ridge. Trespassers will be baked. Comforting, said Tomo. They passed through the archway and entered the Crumlands, a graveyard of shattered scones, dried gravy rivers, and echoing howls that sounded suspiciously like disappointed brunch critics. At the heart of the ridge was a temple carved into a mountainside, shaped like a massive toaster half sunk into the rock. This was it. The oven of ages. They approached carefully, the yoke stone vibrating like a phone in a pancake. Kazuki reached the entrance, pushed the crumb-covered lever, and the ancient toaster opened with a hiss of pastry air. Inside, there was nothing but darkness, and a single pedestal. On it sat a scone. Glowing softly. Steam rose from its golden crust. Butter melted along its side in patterns that hinted at prophecy, despair, and possibly a recipe for eternal brunch. The scone of prophecy, Daisuke whispered. Kazuki reached out. The scone opened its eyes. I have awakened, it said in a voice like warm thunder. Everyone screamed. I am Sconius, first of the brunch divines. I have slumbered since the great spillage. Who dares interrupt my crumb cycle? Kazuki, very slowly, bowed. Kazuki Watanabe. Brunch seeker. Grease wielder. I've seen a syrup dragon explode. I've fought muffin mechs. I'm not intimidated by a talking biscuit. I'm technically a scone. Right. Apologies. Sconius blinked slowly. The tea council has risen. They've begun, Nari said. They've got weaponized etiquette and something called the high noon teapot. Sconius sighed. They never learned to stir counterclockwise. Typical. He hovered upward. If you wish to defeat them, you must wield the crumb code, ancient brunch knowledge passed down from powdered gods. But it cannot be spoken. It must be toasted. A beam of light shot from the pedestal. The toaster temple shook. The stone cracked open to reveal a secret inner vault. Inside was a gilded toaster, humming softly. Insert me, said Sconius. Ah, Tomo hesitated. Are you sure this is consensual? Yes, Sconius barked. Toast me into godhood. Kazuki gently slid the scone into the divine slot. The toaster clicked. Then glowed. Then roared. A pulse of light burst from the mountain, sending waves of golden crumbs across the ridge. Birds chirped hallelujah in scrambled egg. The clouds parted. Sconius re-emerged, not as a pastry, but as a towering golden avatar of breakfast justice, draped in napkin robes, a staff made of baguette, and eyes filled with syrup and doom. You now serve the brunch pantheon, he declared. And I, Sconius the twice-toasted, shall guide you. Kazuki's team stood in awe. Holy eggs, Nari whispered. Sconius turned toward the horizon. The tea council will strike at High Tea Bastion, their floating fortress fueled by judgment and Earl Grey. You must go there. With me. With all the flaky vengeance of forgotten carbs. Sir Squeeze arrived on a butter glider. The bastion's on the move. We've got less than 2 days before it reaches the capital and begins the brunch rewriting protocol. Kazuki raised his grease saber. Daisuke summoned a flower storm. Tomo wrapped his fists in biscuit bandages. Nari locked and loaded her soda cannon. Sconius pointed toward the east. Mount your bagels, warriors. The tea wars begin now. The sky over Gozaru cracked open as High Tea Bastion emerged from the clouds, a titanic floating citadel made of porcelain, polished oak, and weaponized hospitality. Twin smokestacks puffed polite steam rings into the air, and every balcony gleamed with dangerous levels of doily usage. It hovered like a judgmental ant over the skyline, raining pamphlets labeled, "Proper Brunch Etiquette, Why You're Doing It Wrong." From afar, it looked like a flying hotel. Up close, it looked like a civilization-ending teapot. Kazuki, Nari, Daisuke, Tomo, and the newly resurrected god Sconius the twice-toasted prepared to launch their assault from an airborne breakfast cruiser hastily built from syrup barrels and reinforced pancakes. It was barely flight-worthy, but it had cup holders and zero structural integrity, which was exactly their style. "Battle plan," Kazuki said, holding up a sketch drawn in mustard on a napkin. "We go in through the tea gardens, disable the infusion core, and confront the head of the council before they initiate the brunch rewriting protocol." "What's the protocol again?" Tomo asked. "It deletes brunch," Nari said, strapping grenadine cartridges to her soda cannon. "Replaces it with second lunch." Everyone shuddered. "No eggs," Daisuke muttered. "Just dry baguettes and cold meatballs, unforgivable," said Sconius, eyes glowing like sunrise over gravy. The approach as their pancake cruiser rose through the mist, Sir Squeeze relayed tactical updates over biscuit radio. "Watch for scone mines near the hull. Also, they've deployed scone golems shaped like miniature Queen's Guards. Very posh. Very punchable." Ahead, High Tea Bastion gleamed. Tiers of fine china guns rotated outward, each manned by high society snipers armed with peppermint pellet rifles. Fancy violins began playing a waltz of intimidation. "They're trying to overwhelm us with refinement," Nari said. "I hate it," Tomo growled, as he duct-taped a breakfast sausage to each fist. Kazuki squinted through a biscuit monocular. "Tea garden entrance, 3 levels up. Looks quiet." Daisuke nodded. "Too quiet." Which was accurate, because they were immediately blasted by a high-pressure teacup cannon that sent their cruiser spiraling into a sugar cloud. "Abandon breakfast ship." Sconius roared. They bailed. Kazuki landed in a pile of lemon verbena. Nari crash-rolled through a dessert tray. Tomo bounced off a crocumbush and somehow stuck the landing in a yoga pose. Daisuke, of course, floated down on a dandelion parasail. The team regrouped just outside the tea garden gates, a majestic archway guarded by twin scone golems, each holding massive butter axes and judging everyone in sight. "Tea council golems," Kazuki whispered. "They sniff out brunch disobedience." Sconius stepped forward. "I have been toasted twice, and I have risen," he said. "Let no crumb stand in our way." He raised his staff and whispered the crumb code. The air shimmered. The scone golems paused, then bowed. "Long may brunch reign," they rumbled, and let the team pass. "Nice flex," Nari said. Inside the tea gardens, the inner tea garden was a horror show of elite classism. Waiters glided silently with trays of cucumber air, scone artisans performed live butter carvings, and a harpist plucked out Vivaldi's 4 egg substitutes. At the far end stood the infusion core, a whirring, glowing sphere that steeped the emotional atmosphere of the entire bastion. If destroyed, it would send the place into chaotic disarray. If not destroyed, everyone would slowly begin craving finger sandwiches for eternity. "We need to bring it down," Kazuki said. "But do it, politely." Daisuke stepped forward with a soft-spoken apology bouquet. "Let me." He bowed to the infusion core, whispered a haiku about oversteeped sorrow, and placed a single flower bomb at its base. The sphere sputtered, turned pink, and then exploded into rosewater confusion. Guests panicked. Crumpets rebelled. Drones poured tea onto themselves and began weeping. They've lost ceremonial cohesion. Nari yelled. Run! Council chamber showdown. The crew pushed deeper into the bastion's heart. The ceremony chamber, a room shaped like an overturned teacup and filled with swirling tea fog, chandeliers made of crumpets, and a single throne made of antique sugar spoons. There sat the leader of the tea council. The Earl of Steam. Dressed in a velvet tea jacket and holding a pocket watch that could erase brunches from calendars, he turned slowly. You're late, he hissed. We were steeping you a warning. Kazuki raised his grease saber. You've oversteeped the world long enough. You're fools, the Earl replied, rising. Tea is tradition. Control. Tasteful tedium. You want freedom? Flavor? Ha! All it brings is brunch riots and bacon anarchy. Behind him, the high noon teapot powered up. It thrummed, ready to unleash a beam of scalding etiquette across the globe. No more, Skonia said. By the butter, I toast thee. The final battle erupted. Kazuki clashed with the Earl, their weapons sparking, grease versus refinement, flavor versus formality. Nari launched soda blasts across the chamber, shorting out etiquette drones. Tomo hurled himself at servers mid-spoon reload, shouting, who put avocado on this? Daisuke summoned a typhoon of tea-splitting petals, shattering the teapot's beam at the last second. At last, Kazuki stood over the Earl, breathing heavily. Yield, he said. The Earl snarled. You cannot kill tea. It is eternal. Kazuki smiled. We're not killing tea. Then he held up a plate. We're rebranding it. He slapped down a scone. Split. Buttery. Served with hot sauce and a side of hash brown slaw. Brunch tea. A fusion of civility and chaos. The Earl blinked. I feel conflicted. And hungry. Sconius placed a hand on his shoulder. That's brunch, my friend. The Earl collapsed, defeated. The high noon teapot powered down. Alarms ceased. Silence fell. They had won. Again. Later, on the bastion's balcony as the sun rose, the crew stood together, staring out at a world safe once more. We've defeated the Rice Council, the Muffin Mechs, the Sandwich Syndicate, and now the Tea Council, Kazuki said. What's left? Sir Squeeze emerged from a teacup cabinet. Just one last threat. What is it? Nari asked. The Dessert Dominion, he said, gravely. Led by King Fondant. Everyone groaned. Of course it is, Tomo said. I'm not ready, whispered Daisuke. Kazuki smiled. Don't worry. We've got plenty of time. Behind them, the sky rippled with sprinkles. And in the distance, a cupcake began to move. It began with a whisper of sugar in the wind. A marshmallow breeze swept across Gozaru City, gentle at first, almost pleasant, until every pigeon in the city began sweating caramel and muttering the same phrase, the cake has eyes. Kazuki woke up sticky. Not metaphorically. Literally. He sat up from his benched nap at the toasted lair and saw that the wallpaper had turned to marzipan overnight. Nari stumbled in from the bathroom covered in sprinkles and mild trauma. The shampoo was whipped cream, she said flatly. Tomo rushed through the doors, clutching a newspaper made of wafer. It's happening. The dessert dominion is on the move. He slapped the wafer paper on the table. The headline, printed in licorice ink, read, King Fondant claims sovereignty over sweet-based meals. Declares war on savory mornings. Daisuke, seated calmly beside a teapot of lavender broth, looked up. This is it. The final course. Kazuki blinked. Wait. What happened to brunch peace? Didn't we just unite breakfast and lunch under the yoke of friendship? You did, said Sir Squeeze, rolling in dramatically on a rolling pin scooter. But you forgot something. He snapped his fingers. A map unfurled from a honeycomb case. The dessert dominion never wanted brunch. They wanted conquest. Their king, Fondant, believes dessert is the true conclusion to every meal. He doesn't serve after, he serves instead. So he's, what? Trying to eliminate savory entirely? Nari asked. Sir Squeeze nodded grimly. The custard front has already absorbed several towns. Syrup Falls. Now Caramel Falls. Krusty Flats. Now Flan Canyon. Even the waffle wastes have gone sweet. Kazuki narrowed his eyes. He's turning the world into a dessert menu. And unless you stop him, Skonia said, descending from the rafters like a buttery angel, he will initiate glazemelt protocol. A worldwide frosting flood. Tomo winced. How does he even do that? With the trifle engine, Sir Squeeze whispered. An ancient device powered by molten sugar, whipped fury, and the tears of ruined keto diets. Operation, Sour Counteroffensive. The team geared up at once. The final leg of their culinary saga demanded anti-sweet tech, courtesy of the Resistance Kitchen. Kazuki, armored in toast mail, bread-reinforced plating, now wielded the dual spatula griddle blades. Nari upgraded her soda cannon with carbonation core overload, capable of cream disruption. Daisuke donned a garland of pickled basil and carried a launcher that fired emotionally disapproving vegetables. Tomo, armed with the butterflail, a morning star made of hardened croissant dough dipped in clarified fury. Sconius, now glowed with full divine brunch mode, trailing waffle light with every stride. The Candy Crust marched to reach Fondant. They had to cross the Candy Crust fields. Formerly Biscuit Ridge, now paved over with marshmallow concrete and lined with licorice trenches. Gingerbread troops patrolled the border, snapping to attention with cinnamon rifles. Gumdrop turrets dotted the skyline. Music boxes blared terrifyingly upbeat polka variations of dessert jingles. They infiltrated under cover of night, hiding inside a delivery of novelty cupcakes. Kazuki peeked through frosting. We're inside. They emerged inside Cakehold, Fondant's sprawling capital. A city made of sponge cake and lies. The air smelled like compromise and excessive fondant. The skyline was pure pastel tyranny. Nari dry heaved into her sleeve. Too symmetrical. At the center stood the Pavlova Palace, built from meringue, reinforced nougat, and banana lies. Atop its tallest tower churned the trifle engine, a contraption as tall as a cathedral, belching sugar steam, pulsing with pink light. And at its base, standing on a ganache balcony wearing a crown made of rock candy and cruelty. King Fondant. He was beautiful. Terrifying. Smooth. Perfect. His voice echoed through the city as he addressed the gathered masses of cakefolk. People of dessert. Long have we stood as second course. Background acts. No longer. From this day forward, all meals shall end immediately. The pastry crowds cheered. A jellybean flag waved. Fondant raised his staff, the custard cane, and activated the trifle engine. The sky turned pink. Battle of the final bite. Kazuki's team charged the palace gates. The sugar guards were fast, but toastier. Tomo bulldozed through gumdrop shields like a car crash made of breakfast regrets. Nari melted through a wall with fizz foam, screaming, "Too much sprinkle." Daisuke sprouted savory vines from whipped cream flower beds, neutralizing frosting fields with the taste of competent vegetables. Kazuki leapt into the throne room. Fondant turned, calmly sipping a glass of raspberry rage. "You've come," the king said. "To ruin dessert." "No," Kazuki said. "To remind it it's not the only course." Their blades clashed. The custard cane hissed. The griddle blade steamed. As the trifle engine roared, Sconius descended in a burst of warm, flaky light. "You have forgotten the ancient order," Sconius declared. "Savory. Then sweet. Then regret. That is the way." Fondant screamed. "There shall be only sugar." He struck the engine's core, unleashing the glaze melt. But Nari dove forward, soda cannon blazing. She struck the flow with fizzy citrus, disrupting the sweet signal. Tomo threw butter bombs into the vents. Daisuke sang to a garlic bulb until it exploded. And Kazuki, heart full of brunch, struck King Fondant's cane with the yoke stone. Crack. The cane shattered. The trifle engine whined. Then burst into a rain of semifreddo. The aftermath. Gozaru woke the next day in calm golden light. The trifle engine was gone. Fondant, now much humbler, was working in a diner outside the city, flipping pancakes and learning to love moderation. Kazuki sat at the counter. "You make a mean short stack." Fondant smiled sheepishly. "I'm working on hash browns." The war was over. The world at last found peace, in breakfast, brunch, lunch, tea, dinner, and yes, dessert. Together. For now. For a while, things were almost normal. Kazuki lived in a treehouse made from waffle shingles and pancake beams. Nari taught carbonation alchemy at the local soda dojo. Daisuke ran a flower food fusion cafe. His lavender lasagna won 2 passive-aggressive awards. Tomo disappeared briefly to find himself, but returned 2 weeks later with a new scarf and a bad tattoo of a baguette that said, "Slam and yeast." Even Sconius the twice-toasted took a sabbatical, building a shrine to brunch beneath Mount Muffin. But peace, as always, had the shelf life of an egg salad sandwich in summer. It began when Sir Squeeze showed up during breakfast, bursting into Kazuki's treehouse mid-pancake with a look of horror and crusty paperwork stuck to his cape. "They're back," he said, panting. "Who's back?" Kazuki asked. "Please don't say, the Tea Council. I just started sleeping again." "No," Squeeze whispered. "Worse. The leftovers." Everyone froze. "The reheated realm has awakened," Squeeze said. "And the cold ones are stirring." Tomo, mouth full of omelette, frowned. "I thought we sealed the fridge after the custard war." "We did," said Daisuke. "But no seal can hold forever. Especially not the microwave." The Fridge of Fate. The group reconvened in the heart of the city, beneath the Fridge of Fate, a colossal vault built into the mountainside, sealed by 7 locks, powered by expired horseradish and guilt. Sir Squeeze led them into the monitoring chamber. "The locks are weakening. Something inside is pulsing. It calls itself the expired one." "I really don't like that," Nari muttered. Kazuki leaned closer to the screen. Inside, a faint shape swirled, half lasagna, half nightmare. "What is it?" he asked. Squeeze looked grim. "An ancient leftover. Forgotten. Microwaved once too often. It absorbed all the reheated energy of meals no one finished. And now, it wants to finish us." He handed Kazuki a folder titled Reheat Protocol, Nuked Food Emergency. "We sealed it after the freezer rebellion, back when TV dinners tried to stage a coup. We thought it was over. But something's triggered a thaw." Daisuke squinted at the screen. "There's movement in Quadrant 7, that looks like day-old chili." "Worse," Squeeze said. "Meatloaf. With memory." Into the reheated realm the gang suited up, again. Kazuki, wielding a fork-shaped boomerang forged from cast-iron lasagna trays. Nari, sporting a tactical apron laced with baking soda grenades and vinegar vials. Daisuke, armed with urban-fused flamethrowers that emitted smells of nostalgia and time. Tomo, dual-wielding chopsticks blessed by the gods of just one more bite. Sconius, now wearing a microwave-resistant robe of divine crumb weave. They descended into the fridge of fate, past abandoned yogurt temples and Tupperware tombs. The temperature dropped. The light turned bluish. Time felt gooey. The deeper they went, the more surreal things became. Expired food wandered the halls, animate, unstable, bitter. A forgotten fish fillet tried to recite poetry. A burrito from 1998 begged to be released from its tortilla. And in the center of it all stood the expired one. A mass of congealed sauce, old rice, broccoli stems, and burnt cheese, wrapped in the foil of vengeance. It pulsed with nuclear energy and ancient microwave trauma. "I am the forgotten course," it boomed. "I am lunches never loved. I am the soup of pain." "Soup of pain?" Kazuki asked. "Bit dramatic, don't you think?" The floor shook. Crust crumbled from the walls. The fridge groaned. "I shall reheat the world," the creature screamed. "And then I shall oversauce it." The great reheating the reheated realm ignited. A wave of artificial warmth flooded the chamber. Microwaves hidden in the walls activated simultaneously. The team scattered, dodging heat bursts, rogue Tupperware lids, and vengeful ravioli. Nari fired carbonation blasts at the sauce limbs, evaporating gravy into tragic poetry. Tomo fought off a swarm of cold gnocchi that screamed, "Remember me," every time they were stabbed. Daisuke, calmly, whispered to an angry casserole until it gave up and turned into a peaceful frittata. But the expired one was growing. It split into mini-forms, microwave phantoms. Each shaped like forgotten leftovers and screaming lines like, "I was fine until you covered me in sriracha. You never stirred me halfway. You ate around the broccoli." Kazuki charged through the chaos, wielding his boomerang fork, slicing through waves of reheated fury. Sconius joined him, arms blazing with radiant brunch energy. "The microwave is a tool," Sconius bellowed. "Not a lifestyle." They reached the core. Inside, a memory crystal, recording every unfinished meal in history. Kazuki stared at it. "So this is what keeps the leftovers angry." Sconius nodded. "Regret. Waste. The pain of that half sandwich you said you'd come back for." Kazuki picked it up. It vibrated with old guilt. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For every overnuked dumpling. Every crust I didn't eat. Every cold fry I abandoned." The memory crystal cracked. The expired one screamed, "NOO. I was supposed to be enough. And with one final pulse of microwave radiation, it exploded into a mist of warm gravy and slightly stale peace. Aftermath: the fridge of fate stabilized. The reheated realm collapsed into harmless leftovers, which were lovingly packed into eco-friendly containers and distributed to hungry post-war brunches across the land. Kazuki stood, sauce-smeared but victorious. "We really should label things better," he said. Nari nodded. "Expiration isn't the end. It's just a suggestion." Daisuke patted the fridge. "And sometimes, love is warming something twice." Tomo grunted. "I still don't trust soup." They emerged into daylight. The world, once again, was safe. For now. Far away, deep beneath the snack wastes, a bag of ancient potato chips stirred. And somewhere, a vending machine began to hum, with intention. For a brief moment, life in Gozaru City settled into something dangerously close to calm. Breakfasts were long and golden. Brunches lingered well into the afternoon. Even the vending machines returned to their usual job of dispensing mildly disappointing cheese crackers and soda cans that were always a little too shaken. But under the surface, something stirred. It began subtly. Lights flickering in convenience stores. Digital displays glitching in perfect rhythm. Snack wrappers blowing across empty streets as if being summoned. Then, across the city, vending machines began to hum. Not in tune, not with song, but in memory. And deep beneath the earth, in a forgotten bunker sealed behind decades of soda syrup and betrayal, the snackpocalypse archives awoke. Kazuki was the first to hear it. He just sat down for a well-earned bowl of eggy rice when the radio in his pocket crackled to life. Sir Squeeze's voice came through, breathless and low. He didn't waste time. "They're back," he said. Kazuki didn't have to ask who. He already knew. By the time the team reassembled at the old pancake war shelter, dusty, syrup-stained, and still riddled with old waffle shrapnel, Sconius was already waiting. He sat atop a steaming griddle, robes glowing faintly, his hands clasped around a small box made of melted snack plastic. He looked tired. Not the kind of tired you get from fighting fondant or dodging custard, but the tired of someone who's lived too long beside secrets. "They never left," he said, before anyone could speak. "We buried them. But we never deleted them. The snack gods." Kazuki felt a chill pass through him, not from fear, exactly, but recognition. A childhood memory. Pressing the vending machine buttons over and over, hoping it would give more than what he paid for. Hoping it would notice him. "They remember," Sconius continued. "Every coin, every ignored option, every jammed bag of trail mix that nobody tried to shake loose. It wasn't a legend. It was real." Beneath the city, in a labyrinth known only to ancient food monks and a few cursed snack engineers, lay the Snackpocalypse archives, a data vault storing the entire digital soul of global vending history. No one had dared enter it since the pretzel uprising of '03. Until now. Sconius stood and walked to a sealed hatch, its keypad long corroded, glowing faintly with neon green light. He pressed his hand to it. It opened with a hiss of artificial cheddar. Kazuki and the others followed him down. The deeper they went, the more the temperature dropped, not with cold, but with artificiality. A chill made not from air, but from refrigeration units that hadn't shut off in decades. Lights flickered as they descended past snack timelines and chip chronology, shelves of forgotten flavors catalogued in sacred plastic. There were chip bags no one had dared to eat. Sodas banned for having too much pep. Experimental candy bars with souls. The archive was alive. They reached the center. There, built into the wall, was the core console, a machine with 1,000 blinking buttons and one massive screen that displayed a single word, hungry. Nari stepped forward and frowned. I don't like how it's blinking. Machines that blink usually explode, or ask philosophical questions right before they explode. The screen flashed again. A new word appeared. Remember. Daisuke stepped closer. I think it wants us to recall what we took for granted. But Kazuki already knew. These machines weren't angry because they were unused. They were angry because they were used without reverence. No one had thanked a vending machine. No one had whispered, "Thank you," to the snack gods inside. They just pressed buttons and left. A low rumble echoed through the vault. The machines were waking. Above them, Gozaru's vending stalls flickered, ejecting snack packs unprovoked. Candy bars launched themselves like warnings. A rice cracker stand erupted in a fireworks display of salted fury. Back underground, the archive began to open. Vending doors peeled back like petals, revealing an inner sanctum no human had entered in living memory. Inside, suspended in a field of static, was the first snack ever vended. A lone bag of chips. Unopened. Unchosen. Forgotten. Kazuki stared at it. It stared back. Then the voice came, not from the machines, but from every machine. You left me. Kazuki stepped forward slowly. I was 8. I didn't have enough coins. You chose gum, the voice answered, trembling with ancient salt. I didn't know you were there. You never looked. The archive flickered. Around them, other snacks began to glow. Gummy worms. Sour clusters. Trail mix so old it had dreams of the past. We were made for you, the voice said. And you forgot us. Kazuki took a breath. I'm sorry. He reached into the static and took the bag in both hands. The room fell silent. The light steadied. And just like that, the snacks forgave. Above, the vending machines powered down. The ejected treats retracted. Peace returned. For now. Back on the surface, as Kazuki watched the city breathe again, he held the unopened chip bag close. He didn't eat it. He placed it in a shrine made from recycled snack wrappers, lit by the warm hum of a gentle fridge light. A tribute. A reminder. That even the smallest things we leave behind have memories. And sometimes, they want you to know they miss you. You'd think saving the world a few times would buy a little rest. A few quiet mornings. Maybe a croissant. Certainly not an invitation scrawled in paprika on the side of Kazuki's house that simply read, "Come taste what pain tastes like." The chef below. He read it 3 times, then licked it. Cayenne, he said. And, fear. Nari was the first to roll her eyes. Is this seriously our next problem? We just made peace with sentient vending machines. Can we not have one week where food doesn't challenge us to a duel? But deep down, she knew the rhythm by now. Every calm meal was just the silence before a new flavor of madness. Daisuke, as always, was unbothered. He stood under a lemon tree, carefully garnishing his anxiety with chives. We've heard whispers, he said. The chef below isn't just a rumor. He runs the under kitchen. Kazuki raised a brow. That the place where bad meals go to reflect? No, said Sconius, appearing behind them in a robe that now smelled faintly of burnt sugar. It's where meals go to be broken down. Refined. Rebuilt into something that makes people feel again. He paused, the light behind him dimming as if even the sun didn't want any part of this. They believe food should hurt, he said. That flavor only matters if it scars you. Tomo stretched his shoulders, unwrapping a protein bar that immediately caught fire. So, culinary sadists. Great. We haven't fought one of those since the pickled sage riots. Nari slung her soda cannon over her shoulder and looked toward the east. The ground was cracked there, jagged lines stretching like broken bones across the landscape. It's happening underground, she said. Beneath the city. Beneath the pantry. Even beneath the fridge of fate. Sir Squeeze emerged from a nearby compost pile, holding a steaming flask of regret tea. I intercepted a menu, he said. It's not just a restaurant. It's a philosophy. He handed it to Kazuki. The paper was stained in grease and menace. It read, tonight's degustation, amuse-bouche of salted memory palate cleanser of betrayal entree, braised ambition with shame demi-glace dessert, just, fire. Kazuki folded the paper slowly. I don't want any of that, he said. But we're going anyway, Nari replied, already climbing into a rope harness. They entered through a maintenance tunnel hidden behind an old deep fryer in the abandoned buffet district. It smelled like overcooked dreams and cumin. The air grew thick the deeper they went, heavy with expectation and the kind of silence that builds before a performance no one asked for. They passed walls etched with scratched-out recipes. They stepped around broken utensils that looked like they'd been through war. And finally, they reached the under-kitchen. It opened like a wound. Red lighting, long black counters, flames that roared without smoke. Knives hung from the ceiling, suspended in strings of saffron. At the far end of the kitchen, standing in front of a stove made of bones and burnt hopes, stood the chef below. He wore no hat. Only scars. His apron was stitched from failed dishes and bad Yelp reviews. He did not turn as they entered. You've come, he said, voice low and simmering. We're not here to eat, Kazuki called out. The chef chuckled. You will. The walls shifted. Tables emerged. Each set for one. Each covered in silver cloches, trembling slightly. The chef turned. His eyes were glazed with something bitter. You fought pirates. Councils. Sugar. But you've never faced yourself. What do you cook when there's nothing left to prove? Nari muttered something rude. The chef raised his hand. The silver cloches flew open. Steam poured out, not comforting, not warm. Memories. Regrets. Dishes from the past. Kazuki saw a plate of cold rice, served alone on a forgotten night. A dinner he'd skipped for a mission. Tomo saw a pot of stew. The one his father used to make. Before he left. Nari saw a tray of dumplings, slightly burnt. The first thing she ever made that someone called good enough. Daisuke saw nothing. Then blinked. And saw everything. The chef below stepped forward. These are your ingredients. Cook with them. Or be cooked by them. The fire roared. A countdown began. Unspoken, but felt in the bones. Kazuki's fingers twitched. He reached for a pan, shaking off the sting of old choices. I don't need a perfect meal, he said. Just an honest one. He moved. The others followed. They cooked. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't refined. But it was real. And it hit back. As flames danced, ingredients sizzled, and emotions crashed like plates in a storm, the under kitchen began to crack. The chef below screamed, whether in rage or revelation, no one could tell. "You've ruined the plating," he shouted. Kazuki placed a bowl in front of him. Inside, a modest rice porridge. Slightly uneven. Steaming softly. Made with everything he had left. The chef trembled. He took one bite. Then sat down. And cried. Later, as the team surfaced back into the night, the tunnel behind them sealed shut. The under kitchen was gone. But its echo lingered. A reminder that even the sharpest knives can't cut truth. Only taste it. Kazuki didn't say much. He just walked home. And for once, let the food speak for him. The summons arrived on a plate. Not a scroll. Not a messenger. A single porcelain plate, left at the doorstep of Kazuki's treehouse. It steamed gently, though there was no food on it, just one phrase, etched in butter: "You're invited. Don't be late. Flame waits for no one." That was all. He picked it up slowly, examining the golden lettering, and felt the tiniest pulse from the yoke stone in his pocket, as if it, too, had just been challenged. By the time he reached Nari's workshop, she already had the invitation in hand. Hers came hidden inside a cinnamon roll. Daisuke found his folded into a flower arrangement made entirely of edible sadness. Tomo's was deep-fried and taped to the bottom of his socks. All of them had received the same message. Sconius, seated near the window in a lounge chair built from retired spatulas, looked up with something between pride and dread. "The cook-off of eternal flame," he said. "It only happens when the culinary cosmos can't agree who truly deserves the apron of legacy." Kazuki raised an eyebrow. "There's an apron?" "Oh yes," Sconius replied. "A sacred one. Stitched from oven mitts of the divine, blessed by the first griddle. Worn only once every 1,000 years by the true champion of flame." Tomo groaned softly. "We're going to have to win it, aren't we?" "We do," said Nari. "Because if we don't, someone else will. And if that someone else cooks lies better than we cook truth," she didn't finish the sentence. No one needed her to. They all knew who else might be invited. Enemies. Former tyrants. Defeated chefs with scores to settle and sauces to perfect. This was no longer about breakfast. Or dessert. Or even balance. This was about legacy. They arrived at the flame grounds just before sunset. It wasn't a stadium. It wasn't even a location. The eternal flame itself created the arena. An open-air coliseum suspended in a pocket of time where gravity bent politely and the clouds parted out of respect. Dozens of teams had already gathered. Over there, the Sandwich Syndicate, Lady Arugula looking sharper than ever in a robe of pressed rye. Near the judge's table, the remnants of the tea council whispered into porcelain flutes. Even King Fondant stood beside a treacle cauldron, no longer a tyrant, but still absurdly smooth. And in the corner, fanning himself with a grilled eel skewer, was the one no one expected. The chef below. He gave Kazuki a slow, crooked nod. The announcer appeared in a pillar of basil smoke, an enormous being with a voice like a sizzling skillet and a hat taller than reason. "Welcome, challengers," the figure boomed. "To the cook-off of eternal flame. One dish. One chance. You will not be judged by mortals. You will be judged by the flame." The crowd stilled. The flame itself flared to life in the center of the arena, a towering column of golden fire, swirling with ingredients, heat, and memory. It hungered. Not for food, but for meaning. Skonia stepped behind Kazuki and whispered, "It sees what's inside you. Not just what you serve." Nari cracked her knuckles. "Good. I've got plenty of unresolved flavor." Daisuke whispered a blessing over his spices. Tomo just muttered, "Let's cook." There were no rules. Only the moment. Teams scattered to their assigned fire circles, each with a floating prep station and one shimmering pan, impossible to burn, but unforgiving to the unbalanced. Kazuki took the lead. He didn't ask his team what they'd make. He already knew. It would be all of them. Everything they'd been through. A breakfast born of pain, pastries, soda lightning, forgiveness, vending machine trauma, divine brunch, and leftover redemption. It began with the rice. Daisuke laid it gently in the pan, infusing it with herbs whispered in silence. Nari prepared the reduction, soda fizzed down with caramelized shallots and regret. Tomo braised the meat, thin slices from a beast they'd once battled, now tamed by fire. Kazuki folded it all together with egg, butter, and a touch of chaos. And in the center of it all, he placed a single piece of toast, unevenly cut, burned on one edge, but made with full attention. The flame watched. And it remembered. Around them, others presented their plates. Fondant unveiled a dish so symmetrical it made 3 judges weep and forget their own birthdays. Lady Arugula's tea-glazed finger sandwiches floated like dreams but tasted of passive aggression. The chef below served nothing. He simply walked forward and said, "I'm not ready." The flame blinked once and let him leave. Then it turned to Kazuki's team. And it waited. Kazuki stepped forward, plate in hand. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He placed the dish on the altar. The flame rose. It hovered over the plate. Tasted. Then paused. And flickered. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then, it bowed. The sky cracked open with light. A thunderclap of flavor rang across the horizon. Distant diners felt it in their hearts. The sacred apron appeared in the fire, floating toward Kazuki's outstretched hand. He took it. And the crowd, all of them, even those who had once wanted him erased, stood in silence. Then clapped. Not politely. Not out of duty. But because, for just a moment, the world had tasted something true. That night, under the stars, they didn't celebrate. Not with noise. Not with parades. They sat by the fire, eating leftovers from the cook-off, sharing quiet smiles and broken chopsticks. Because they didn't just win. They'd been understood. And in the culinary cosmos, there's no greater victory. It had been exactly 13 days since the cook-off of Eternal Flame. Not that anyone was counting. But when you save the world over lunch, you start keeping track. Kazuki had finally figured out how to flip eggs without summoning divine sparks. Daisuke was teaching a free herb meditation class in the park. Nari had finally cleaned the soda cannon. And Tomo had started baking. No one trusted it. Least of all Tomo. The world felt still. Too still. Until one morning, Kazuki opened his front door and found a business card stabbed into his wooden porch with a chopstick. The card read, "Flavor has no laws." The reduction there was no name. No contact. Just an oily thumbprint and a faint scent of burnt balsamic. Kazuki blinked. "Nope," he said, and closed the door. By lunchtime, things got weirder. Sconius didn't show up for their weekly toast duel. That alone wasn't alarming, he was a god. He moved at the speed of metaphor. But when he also failed to appear at the sacred brunch table, Kazuki felt something twist. Then the pigeons arrived. Not flying. Walking. In pairs. Wearing tiny aprons and tapping coded messages on cafe windows. Kazuki met Nari in a dumpling alley 2 blocks south of the old syrup canal. They took him, she said before he could speak. Sconius. Gone. No toast trail. No divine crumbs. Just a single smear of aioli. Tomo joined them moments later, holding a half-burnt envelope. It was pinned to my baguette tattoo, he said grimly. Kazuki took the note. It was short. He refused to bottle brunch. Now he belongs to the simmer. Nari's eyes narrowed. It's them. The reduction. Daisuke emerged from a nearby tea bush, perfectly steeped in calm. They're not a rumor anymore, he said. They're real. And they're buying recipes that should never be sold. Kazuki didn't need to ask what that meant. The reduction wasn't a kitchen. It wasn't a restaurant. It was an ideology, a whisper in the alleyways of cuisine. A group that believed in stripping everything down to its core flavor, no matter the cost. If it couldn't be reduced, it didn't deserve to exist. And they were moving. Fast. That night, under the flickering lights of a yakitori stall, the team met with Sir Squeeze. He looked shaken. They've opened a market, he whispered. Underground. Beneath the spicy district. No laws. No menus. Just trade. Sauces that alter memories. Seasonings that rewrite intent. They're offering money for dishes that should have stayed sacred. And they took Sconius, Kazuki said. Why? Sir Squeeze leaned in. Because he refused to sell the last drizzle. Nari's brow furrowed. That's not real. It is now, Squeeze said. And if they get it, they won't just flavor the world. They'll boil it down. Into one taste. One truth. No complexity. Just, control. Tomo raised his hand slowly. Sorry. Quick question. Are we talking about, like, world domination through culinary minimalism? Yes. Oh, Tomo said. That's horrifying. The team descended that night through the sewers behind a retired takoyaki stand. The air turned thick with spice and lies. They passed rooms lit only by the glow of boiling reductions. Hallways stacked with barrels labeled things like anger jam and despair broth. The sauce market was alive. Vendors whispered in 10 flavors. Buyers handed over gold for recipes with names like Regret au Jus and Remorse Vinaigrette. Kazuki had never seen anything like it. People weren't eating here. They were trading memories for condiments. One woman gave up her first kiss for a demi-glace. A man sold his sense of humor for a perfect hollandaise. Daisuke placed a calming rosemary sprig behind his ear. This place is unseasoned madness. Then they saw him. Sconius. Chained. Hovering. Surrounded by sauce priests in smoke-stained robes. His eyes were closed, his light dimmed. A single bowl floated in front of him, empty. A voice echoed through the market. The god will drizzle, it said. And the world will taste its last complexity. Kazuki stepped forward. Or, he grabbed a wok from a nearby stand, lit it with his own fury, and said, "We start cooking." The market paused. Then chaos. Vats of mole exploded. Curry dust blinded guards. Nari fired soda into a pepper storm that knocked over 3 vinegar monks. Tomo punched someone with a meatball. Daisuke spun herbs into a vortex of regret that paralyzed an entire aisle of buyers. And in the middle of it all, Kazuki reached Sconius. The god looked at him, weak but smirking. "Didn't think you'd come." Kazuki smiled. "Your brunch. Your family." He broke the chain with his spatula. Sconius rose. And his light returned. In one movement, he raised a single finger, and from it dripped a golden thread of sauce, subtle, quiet, impossibly balanced. The last drizzle. He caught it in a spoon. And whispered, "Not for sale." Then he flung it into the sky. It exploded. Not violently, but beautifully. A wave of pure complexity washed over the market. The buyers stopped. The traders froze. And for a moment, the air was full of flavor that couldn't be priced. Just, experienced. The market shut down. The reduction fled. And the world tilted back to center. Later, back at the treehouse, Kazuki stirred his tea slowly. "We keep cooking," he said. "Even when they try to boil us down," Nari added. Daisuke nodded. "Because food isn't control. It's choice," Sconius said softly. "Messy. Unfinished. Sometimes a little burnt." They sat in silence a while. No one spoke of the reduction. But no one forgot it either. Because in a world of 1,000 tastes, the scariest thing wasn't bad food. It was the idea that one flavor could be enough. The wind changed the day the letter arrived. Not with a chill, not with heat, but with flavor. Something subtle and strange hung in the air, as if the entire city had been dusted with a spice no one could name. It was fragrant. Familiar. Dangerous. Kazuki noticed it first. Standing on his balcony with a cup of tea and a slightly over-toasted bagel, he caught the scent just as the paper plane struck his forehead. It didn't come from the sky. It came from below. He picked it up carefully. Parchment, folded precisely 12 times, sealed with a mark made of fire and fondant. He turned it over, and his face hardened. A single word was written across the front. "Run." By the time he reached Nari's workshop, she was already packing. "They found it," she said. It was only a matter of time. Tomo entered next, carrying a fruit tart he'd been emotionally attached to for exactly 8 minutes. "You think they'll try to cook it?" "No," Daisuke said from the doorway. "They'll try to weaponize it." He dropped a book onto the table. It was old. Bound in brittle dough. The cover read, "The Compendium of Forbidden Flavor." Sconius stood behind him, quiet. Reverent. Dreadful. "I sealed it myself," the god said. 1,000 years ago. We all agreed. It was never to be opened. Kazuki sat slowly. "So who opened it?" Sconius took a breath. "Pan cuisine." The room went still. Nari stared. "That's not a person." "No," said Sconius. "It's a country." Far beyond Gozaru's borders, on an island no map dared name, lay a nation lost to culinary exile. Pan cuisine, a place where every flavor, technique, and dish collided at once. A boiling cauldron of confusion and culinary chaos. They believed no recipe was sacred. No combination off-limits. They called it fusion. The rest of the world called it, too much. It had been dormant for centuries. But now. Pan cuisine had returned. And they had found it. The unnamed recipe. A dish so potent it blurred truth and flavor. So powerful it had been locked away, its name erased from the tongue by divine decree. No one remembered what it tasted like. Only that it ended a civilization. Kazuki paced the floor. If they cook it, what happens? Sconius spoke, slowly. It becomes real. All of it. Everything it was meant to express. Every regret. Every rage. Every broken promise ever seasoned into a dish. Tomo muttered, I bet it has raisins. Nari looked at the god. Why was it made? Sconius hesitated. To prove a point. No one asked what the point was. They all felt it. By dusk, the team boarded a rusted sky ferry headed east. Only one pilot dared fly to Pan Cuisine, Captain Mintz, an old meatball magnate turned smuggler, who now flew a ship powered by steam, spice, and spite. He didn't ask questions. Just lit a pipe made of sugar glass and said, you better bring your best pans. They don't believe in plating. The journey was rough. The air turned thick with clashing aromas. Pork battled pineapple. Soy fought cinnamon. At one point, the sky wept gravy. They reached the island at midnight. It didn't look like a country. It looked like a food court that had gone feral. Towers made of sushi spiral beside kebab cathedrals. Rivers of broth cut through fields of conflicting sides. Somewhere in the distance, a statue of a three-headed chef rotated slowly and judged them. Pan cuisine didn't just cook food. It was food. And in the center of it all, standing atop a ziggurat made of stone-aged noodles, was the kitchen. Inside, the unnamed recipe. Kazuki and his team approached quietly. No one stopped them. No guards. No alarms. Just music. Utensils on steel. A gentle chop 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 in the night air. And then, a voice. So, you've come to ruin dinner. A figure emerged from the steam. Su-Dictator Morimoto Bane, High Priest of Flavor Collapse. He wore 12 aprons, each one more culturally confusing than the last. He smiled without joy. The world fears what it cannot taste, he said. But we embrace it. The unnamed recipe is almost ready. And when it is, the flavor storm will begin. Nari stepped forward. It's too much. You can't bind that many emotions to a dish. It's not food anymore. It's a cry for help in casserole form. Morimoto Bane laughed. Exactly. He turned, walking back into the steam. Kazuki watched him go. Can we stop it? Sconius shook his head. No. But we can outcook it. They set up their own kitchen beneath a broken dumpling temple. No time for thinking. No time for doubt. Just instinct. Flour. Flame. Truth. Kazuki led the plating. Daisuke tamed the ingredients. Nari tempered the fire. Tomo punched a sauce. And together, they created a counterdish. No fusion. No trick. Just a meal that meant something. They called it the remembering. And they served it as the unnamed recipe came to a boil. Steam collided with steam. A taste wave surged across the island. One dish bent reality. The other bent it back. Morimoto Bane dropped his ladle. Sconius caught the falling bowl. And in the quiet that followed, Pan Cuisine exhaled. The ziggurat crumbled. The island stilled. And the unnamed recipe was forgotten again. As the sun rose, Kazuki held what was left of their counterdish. A bite of rice. A single herb. A story, told with warmth and no need for explanation. Not every flavor needs a name. And not every dish needs to be remembered. Some are just for the ones who cooked them. Together. The flight home was quiet. The skies above Pan Cuisine were still heavy with flavor residue, like the air after a thunderstorm, but stickier, and faintly tasting of burnt fondue. The clouds didn't float. They hung. Suspended. Unsure. Kazuki sat in silence, watching the world rebuild itself below. They had done it. Again. But something about the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like pause. Sconius sat across from him, no longer glowing. Just old. Tired. His brunch robe spotted with flour and memory. "It's over," Kazuki said. The god didn't reply. The sky fairy rumbled gently. Daisuke was brewing something herbaceous in the back, his eyes half closed. Tomo had fallen asleep mid-cracker. Nari sat beside the emergency whisk, hands folded, watching the clouds melt into dawn. They didn't know. Not yet. Only Kazuki saw the envelope waiting on the table when they returned to the treehouse. Unsealed. No stamp. Just a fork, drawn in ink the color of blood orange. Inside was a single note, handwritten in elegant fury, "We said we'd share it. But you made it yours. T." Kazuki stared at the letter for a long time. He didn't need to read it twice. He just whispered, "Taro." Taro Takashi had been a whisper for most of the story. Once Kazuki's best friend, now erased. Or so they thought. He wasn't a villain. He was worse, someone who had once understood everything they fought for. Who had held the pan in the same way. Who had stood beside Kazuki when the grease war began, when the butter accord failed, when brunch was still an idea, not a religion. And now, he was back. Kazuki didn't tell the others right away. Instead, he returned to the old ramen shop where he and Taro used to train. It was abandoned now. Mostly. Inside, he found a bowl. Fresh. Still steaming. Tonkatsu. Heavy broth. Extra fat. Exactly the way he liked it. Next to it, a folded napkin. Ink smudged. Barely legible. It was never about who cooked better. It was about who got to decide the recipe. And beneath that, another line, "Meet me. One last time." In the kitchen beneath the kitchen. Kazuki left the ramen untouched. He knew what it meant. The final test wasn't a war. It was a choice. They met that night. Beneath the city. Under the foundation of Gozaru's original cooking school. The Knife Shrine. A place forgotten, buried under layers of history and bad infrastructure. Taro was already there. He stood in the dark, one foot on a cracked cutting board, hands behind his back. He hadn't aged. Or maybe he had aged perfectly, just enough to be bitter. Kazuki said nothing. Taro broke the silence. "You always cooked with your heart." "I still do. That's why you'll lose." Kazuki shook his head. "I didn't come here to fight you." Taro stepped into the light. "I did." He pulled out 2 pans. Cast iron. Well worn. Glowing faintly with the heat of old resentment. Kazuki reached into his coat. pulled out his own. There were no rules. No time limit. Just ingredients. Memory. And regret. They cooked. Not like enemies. Like brothers. The kitchen filled with smells that were never meant to be mixed, bitter citrus and joyful garlic, burnt butter and cold forgiveness. They didn't speak. Their flames did. Spoons clanged like accusations. Oil hissed like old secrets. And when it ended, 2 dishes stood between them. One, Taro's. Perfect. Balanced. Cold. The other, Kazuki's. Messy. Wild. Warm. Taro stepped back. You're still too much. And you're still too afraid to be enough, Kazuki said. They didn't taste the food. They didn't have to. In the silence that followed, something gave way. Not loudly. Just, honestly. Taro looked at him. I missed you. Kazuki smiled, softly. I didn't stop. The world didn't end. The next morning, the sun rose the way it always did, on tea and toast and early morning rice steam. Gozaru City returned to itself. The Rice Council never rose again. The tea syndicate faded into memory. Even the reduction broke apart, its members taking quiet jobs teaching flavor theory to confused children. Kazuki, Nari, Daisuke, and Tomo stayed together. They didn't form an empire. They didn't write a cookbook. They just cooked. Sometimes for crowds. Sometimes for each other. Sometimes just for the joy of trying. And once a year, on the anniversary of the Great Cook-Off, they left a dish out by the knife shrine. 2 bowls. 2 spoons. 1 unfinished conversation. Because some flavors never fade. They just simmer. Waiting.